and in the middle of that, I had this epiphany of like, wow, I'm going to die if I keep on this track. So I ended up buying a van. Mom and dad helped me. I moved out to my uncle's property on a farm just outside of Sundre, Alberta. And we had this Red Deer River, which is like class 3 plus big water pool drop. And I bought a Piranha 420 and lived on my uncle's property, ran barbed wire fence for a guy named Paul Pernick, and kayaked every morning before work, every day after work.
Welcome back to another episode of Tales from the Crips. Today's episode deserves a warning as it touches on some pretty serious issues. These include violence, drug use, mental illness, sexual abuse, death, suicide, etc. And while none of these issues are discussed in great detail, it's not suitable for children, and some of adults who may be triggered by these issues or simply want something lighter may want to skip this episode. However, we have some fun in this interview as well, and I believe that my guest has some important things to say, and we can all learn something from his experiences. So if you're not scared away by this warning, I hope you'll stick around. But first, a shout out to my sponsors. And while my sponsors may not condone all the actions discussed in this episode, they do condone sharing stories about the river with the paddling community and getting out there and having fun. So one of today's sponsors is Four Corners Riversports. To me, Four Corners is exactly what a paddling shop should be. It's staffed with dedicated river people who know the sport inside and out and are all about having fun and getting people outside. Four Corners Riversports is located in Durango, Colorado. They're a full-service paddle sports retail and rental store. If you're looking to get on the water, look no further than Four Corners Riversports. Call them at 970-259-3893 or visit their website at www.riversports.com. This episode is also sponsored by Taylor Barker with the group real estate Steamboat. I've known and paddled with Taylor for years, and he brings passion to everything he does. Steamboat Springs is a wonderful town with the Yampa River running right through it and has a vibrant and friendly boating community. If you're thinking of making a move to the Steamboat area or purchasing a vacation home, be sure to get in touch with Taylor. He's happy to give you a lay of the land, the real estate market, and to help find the perfect property for you. You can reach him at 336-314-4353 or by email at taylor@brokerintheboat, and you can find those links in the show notes. This podcast is being featured on paddlinglife.com. Paddlinglife.com does a wonderful job of finding all the most interesting happenings in the world of paddling and bringing them straight to you in the form of news, interviews, articles, videos, and more. Check out paddlinglife.com. Now, on to the show. Hello and welcome to Tales from the Crips, a whitewater storytelling podcast. Benny, my guest today, came to me by way of my previous guest, Mike Nash, who said he knows a character who might be interesting to interview. Many years ago, Benny connected with Mike's brother Andy when they were both in Ecuador. They became friends and paddling partners, and in recent years, Benny's helped with the marketing side of Hardcore Paddles, their paddle making business. Over the last decade plus, Benny's made kayaking a huge part of his life, paddling some 300-odd days a year, ranging from his home country of Canada, where he grew up, all the way down to South America, where we find him today. In addition to kayaking, he's also been a fierce mental health advocate, raising awareness by sharing his own struggles in hopes of reaching and helping other people who may have their own struggles. In talking with him, I was quickly struck by his stark honesty, unique life perspective, and passion for kayaking. I'm looking forward to an interesting and unique conversation today. So Benny Clark, welcome to the show.
Hey man, how's it going? Good to finally meet you and chat with you.
Absolutely, Benny. So we talked a little bit before, and you are down in Ecuador right now, huh?
Yeah, man, we're chilling, getting ready for the New Year's Eve party in Baños right now. Just having some fun and enjoying the warm weather.
I'll bet. I guess they go big down there for New Year's in Ecuador, eh?
Yeah, they like burn mascots and shit, and they dress up as the men dress up as women. It's different. It's definitely not what I'm used to in my brain. That's for sure. It's pretty impactful like party. So
You just made a funny connection for me. So people like the men dress up as women just for like as a thing. It's not
yeah,
because
I don't.
they're
I think the story behind it is, from what I know, is it's like the men do it every year to make them feel like women, so they're safer at work or something like that. So if they die
oh,
at work, it's like the woman would have to go out and beg for money because they can't work, and the men, something on the lines. I think that's what I've been told down here. So I don't know. That could be
I never
true.
heard that.
That could be bullshit. I don't know. It could be just yeah. So,
I do have a memory from I don't know, 10 years ago when I was down there and there was some Independence Day. I got the feeling there were a lot of Independence Days in Ecuador, but they, I do remember seeing some people that were dressed up as trans and I just assumed they were trans people, but maybe that was part of the thing.
yeah, I don't know. I think I thought it was a New Year's thing, but I think there's some in February they do it again as well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it would have been February, I think, when I was there. Yeah,
yeah. It seems like it's pretty crazy, but
cool.
I've
So
never been
you,
catcalled so much. Sorry, I've never been catcalled. So I put a pink wig on today, and
sounds like you're prepared.
yeah.
Well, you've blown the story here. So we're recording this on New Year's Eve, and it's evening over there for you, and I'm saving you from getting in too much trouble too early
Absolutely.
by making you do a podcast right now.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I fully agreed to this on this night. We were supposed to do it a couple of days ago, and fully agreed to it now because it's a little bit better because I get to get out of trouble. So,
I'm sure you'll have plenty of time later to get into
sorry, I
trouble.
blew the story there.
But tell me a little bit about what you got going on in Ecuador because it sounds like you have a new gig going this year.
Yeah, I bought some property down here. Well, my parents helped me buy some property down here. My Canada struggles are very real, and Ecuador has always been a very good place for my head and heart. And ended up moving down here in September of this year. Well, yeah, I guess still this year. And my property that I bought is a part of the Oso Perezoso, which is a kayak hostel down here, the Kayak Hostel Ecuador, with a friend of mine, Gabo, who's one of my very, very good friends. So, yeah, I just been coming down and just try to get some boating in and get people down here and show them some fun on the river and have more people have safer trips down here. Just because of all the previous accidents. And Ecuador is such a beautiful place. It's the jungle,
Oh yeah.
man. Yeah, La Selva es mi corazón. I think it's how you say it. The jungle is my heart.
Hmm.
So, yeah.
That's cool. That's cool. That's cool. You're sending me the other night some photos of some major flooding going on in Tana. Huh? Is that still going on or?
Yeah, we thought it was the end of it. Me and Abby and a few people down here firmly believe that there's like a full moon cycle and then there's the new moon cycle, and within like days of those, there's typically flash floods and stuff like that. But this one was especially special on the full moon, and I don't know, it was like 400 mil or 300 mil. It was crazy. Tana and the Tana River ended up hitting the town of Tana, which is, I think the river is 25 foot below the
Wow,
yeah. So it
that's
was
nuts.
like yeah. Typically, those photos I sent you, that video I sent you, typically you can ankle deep walk across that river when it's a normal flow, and it was like 20 feet high or whatever. And apparently, like I'm in Banos now, like I said earlier, and apparently it flash flood or there's a bunch of floods there this morning too as well. So yeah, it's not a typical thing. We're actually, contrary to popular belief, we're in dry season down here. Wet
Yeah.
season is on the coast, but the dry season is where we're at, and they've had they're calling it El Nino or whatever. They've had a lot of been a pretty moist, wet season, but not like it was the past few days. It was pretty crazy. So
Did it blow out all the rivers, or was there still some boating to be done?
so when it flashed after the videos I sent you, we I took a couple of people out on the upper Missawahi on just below Lotus section from actually our hostels like right on our upper Missawahi river, and we put in there and did the El Reten section, I guess you call it, of the Missawahi River, and
Okay.
it was awesome. Wicked class 4, but there was no rocks. It was literally mini big
Oh
water.
wow.
It was pretty cool, man. So it's the best flow I've had on the Missawahi this year. So
Wow, that sounds awesome. I think the first time I went to Ecuador, which was, I don't know, 13 years ago or something like that, we did that upper section. I don't know exactly what it was between, but it was definitely, it was fun, but it was not like that. I remember lots of little big boulders that you boofed the corners of and that kind of thing.
yeah, man. It's typically the booth. Definitely, this is booth central. It's booth to the moon everywhere on that. But there was literally, it was pillows everywhere this time. pillow.
Nice.
Yeah, it was, yeah, really friendly level though. It was really good. It wasn't too crazy. So yeah.
I learned that last year when I was in Ecuador and did the Piatua. Same thing where I hadn't done the Piatua for like 13 years. And when I went there, I was like, it was all right. It's a fun little class 3, pretty jungle section. And we got a lot of water when we came the next time. And it was exciting.
It turns full on, man. That's like 16 kilometers, 15 kilometers of like solid class 4 at medium flow. It's like, it's nonstop. It's like, it just keeps going and going. Yeah.
Big paddle stroke after big paddle stroke.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Piatua is probably one of the best rivers down here besides the Hoyene, I think. So.
Oh man, once I got it with water, I understood.
Yeah. Everything once water hits down here, it's a totally different ball game, man. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, I think we got a lot to cover, a lot to talk about today. So I just wanted to frame the discussion a little bit for the listeners, because I listened to a couple. I think Mike told me that you'd been on some podcast in the past, and I dug them up, and it was some kind of mental health oriented podcast that I'm sure people can find if they Google it. But I listened to a couple of them just to get a little bit of idea of kind of where you're at, where you come from, and what's going on. And one of the things that struck me, as I mentioned in the introduction, is I really appreciated kind of how your approach of like honesty and willing to be open about things was. And I thought that was pretty cool. And it attracted me to wanting to do an interview with you, But that podcast focused a lot on mental health and didn't get into the kayaking too much. And people here listening are all about kayaking, I'm sure. So we definitely want to be heavy on the kayaking and getting some of the crazy stuff you've done there, because you've had some cool adventures as well. But I also want to spend a good bit of time in the first part of this to really, the two are inextricable for you. Like the kayaking is heavily influenced by the mental health issues you've gone through your whole life, and vice versa. Like, it sounds like kayaking has had a huge impact on your ability to deal with your mental health issues.
Absolutely.
So I think it's really interesting to dig into this first and kind of understand the frame of reference that you have as you approach kayaking and other people and all of that kind of stuff.
Sweet. It sounds good. Yeah.
Yeah.
I appreciate the kind words too, as well.
Yeah. But let's kind of start with the beginning. Like, what was your, if you go back to your early memories, like what was life like for you growing up? You grew up somewhere in Canada. Like, where did you grow up? What was your family life like? What was your neighborhood like? That kind of stuff.
Yeah, I grew up in southwestern Alberta, Calgary, Alberta, right near Banff National Park, which a lot of people know that more than Calgary, but Calgary's where the Stampede is held. But yeah, I grew up there, and I had probably the best parents a child could ask for. They were understanding. My dad was a firefighter. Mom was a stay-at-home mom, and dad was a geologist for a company. And he ended up saying, no, I don't want to do Monday to Friday. I want my kid, my life out in the mountains. He ended up taking a 75% pay cut and went into like firefighting with that. Back then, I think it was like maybe $35,000 a year, and he wanted the 4 on 4 off so he could take, he could go out to the mountains because he was a mountain boy. And then his future kids he wanted to be mountain kids too as well. So he had the ability to take us out in the mountains. And so like ultimately I had phenomenal parents. They were good. I had the blessing of watching my father grow up, or like me when I was growing up, of watching my dad like do that typical back in the day yelling and screaming and that kind of thing, but I watched him grow from that because he never wanted to be my grandfather. My grandfather was not a good human. He's alcoholic, that kind of thing, and a lot of other stuff with him, but he never wanted to be his father. So I had the pleasure of, while I was growing up, watching him change as a human and become a better human, and watch him progress from that what he didn't want to be and he was, and he changed it throughout our lives. So I had the blessing of growing up with parents that actually wanted to change and didn't think that you can't teach old dog new tricks. They always just like, dad always like, no, let's like, I need to sort this out. This is not okay to do to my kids and my family and stuff. And so I was blessed with that. And I was an athlete. I was a gymnast at 12 years old, 11 years old. Mom and dad came to the competitions all the time, that kind of thing. And, he fed me into snowboarding and all that kind of stuff. So I had phenomenal parents, and I grew up in a pretty good neighborhood. Like, the neighborhood wasn't bad. I think I grew up it was Rundle, the Run DLE in Calgary. But it was back then. It was a pretty good neighborhood. We lived on a cul-de-sac, and we had all these. I had friends pretty much in every house that we went out. And back in that day, we didn't get to be in the house. On the weekends after school or after school, they're like, "No, come home when we yell for dinner. Get out of here." We had that. That '80s bring up. That none of the bubble wrap crap. It was like, none of this other stuff that that we're all struggling with now. Just that. That idea of that we played Cowboys and Indians when we were kids, shooting cap guns at each other. And, I might get in trouble for saying it that way now. I don't know. But but that's literally what we, it was I had a good life. I just,
And you had siblings?
I had an older brother. He was 3 years older than me. Of course, we never really got along, but typical sibling rivalry.
Yeah.
The unfortunate side for him, I was always way better physically than he was. He was a little bit better in the literature stuff, and I excelled really good at everything physical I did. So he always did not like me for it. So,
do you have a relationship now, or?
I do not speak to my brother at all. That's that we can get into that. Well, we can chat. I don't know. That's a little bit more on the mental health side of it. I suffer sexual trauma from 7 to 12 years old from my older brother, and it was not his fault. The stuff was done to him from other people in his life, not my parents. But
Wow.
I think it was there's stuff with the grandfather and stuff like that. And he was only 2 years older than me. Like, he was 9 years old, I was 7. So it was that vicious bullshit cycle that we all go through. It's like, we think if that's okay. And he spent a lifetime doing the best that he could to change those things. He's got a beautiful family, three kids, and he's done everything in his, like, he changed what it was. I turned on him at 12 years old and beat the living snot out of him, and it never happened again. And he, I don't want to be remembered I want to be remembered as the cool uncle that never comes around, that does kayaking and mental health stuff. I don't want to be remembered as the uncle that killed their father. And as I get older, the triggers get worse. And like I said, I know it's not his fault, but the empathy side of it, as I get older with my illness, I can't control some of that side of it. So I made the choice to step away. And there are other reasons for it. Like, one of my suicide attempts, he never ever came to the hospital and saw me, and that kind of thing. So I've decided to exit pretty much all of my family out of my life, because they've never been really good to me. They've always judged me, and always, like, the life I live and that kind of thing. And I always did my best around them. But, I have my mom and dad in my life, and that's all I need. Mom and dad, or I'm really close with them. Talk to them all the time. Love my dad, love my mom. So, yeah.
So what was kind of the first signs you have, or that you remember, that, your brain wasn't like the average brain, that something was off?
I think that was like at the end of, like, when I snapped on my brother, and like I ended up going out that night, and I think I was 12. I ended up kicking the crap out of a fence so bad that my leg was nearly busted up so bad. And I think at that point, at 12 years old, I didn't think there was anything wrong, but I knew there was something different. I had a lot of aggression in me after that. I had a lot of, what's the word? Rebelness in me, that I hated authority because of, at the time my brother was an older brother. So that to me was authority. So I kind of correlated that, I ended up starting to fight and stuff like that at school, and that kind of thing. And yeah, I think that was when I knew something was wrong, because those fights, even when I lost, I'd pick fights with 3 other kids, and I'd get my ass kicked from 3 kids, and I'd be okay with it, because it made me feel normal, because I could feel the pain and stuff. So yeah, I think it definitely started at the 12 or 13 area. That kind of thing, especially when I did my first line of cocaine at 13 years old. That's when I knew there was something not like I said, not wrong, just like extremely different, so.
How did you get introduced to coke that young?
I went out on my own. I this is going to sound funny, but it was literally because of that Tony Montana movie, what's it called? Scarface. I literally watched that movie, and I wanted to be that person for some odd reason at 13 years old. And I thought, if I could become that, nobody would fuck with me. Nobody would, everybody would just, like, either leave me alone or ask me for help, or, I could be that. I almost a god complex, I guess you could say, like just like or hero complex. Like I wanted to save people, but I wanted people to be terrified of me, and then I
Yeah.
went out of my way and I went out and just tried to find it. And my parents started noticing a lot of things go wrong after that, and suspensions from school and getting kicked out of this Calgary school board because I assaulted my principal and
Jeez, man.
yeah. So
What about relationships with like other people your age? Did you have friends, or were you
I
pretty
had
isolated?
what at the time I thought were friends, but they weren't. They literally had me around for entertainment.
Mm.
That kind of thing. I also struggled like with the popular kids. I hated bullies, and I watched people bully. Like we had a kid named Jeremy. He had cerebral palsy and stuff, and in a wheelchair. And these kids would always pick on him. And I ended up stuffing this kid in the locker and beating the living snot of him while he's in the locker. And I ended up getting suspended from school. And I walked out of that school with my head held high and going like, these guys don't even know what just happened. Like they have no clue. And I was okay with it. I think I was 14 at that time, or no, 15 at that time in junior high. And I didn't a lot of like in elementary I got bullied like crazy, and I was always a little guy, and I finally just turned on the bullies and ended up becoming the bully, if that makes any
Yeah.
sense, right?
Yeah.
One extreme to the next, but yeah.
How did your parents react to this? How did they try to manage it?
They tried multiple ways. I went to psychologists and I'm pretty like or psychiatrists, and they wanted to diagnose me with ADD at a younger age, and because my dad was talking to the psychiatrist with my dad or with my mom, and I was climbing the gymnasium behind him, and they're like, yeah, he's got ADD, and my dad's like, no, he's just a hyper kid. We need to get him outside. We need to get him to do things. And my dad didn't buy into that Ritalin bulk, that Ritalin phase and stuff like that, and
Yeah.
ended up we just start going to the mountains and stuff like that, and then like 16 years old, he ended up saying, screw this, I'm done, the house is up for sale, me, you, and your mom are going to Australia for a year. He figured that he could just take me away from everything, and that was that, right? And
When you did go to the mountains with them, did that help you? Like, what kind of things would y'all do?
we'd go up to the place like Lake of the Horns, go mountain biking and just like go do the typical awesome amount of outdoor stuff, and not like the weekend warrior shit. Like we'd go out for 2, 3, 4 days and do hiking trips like the West Coast Trail and yeah, like he was an old mountain man, so he if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have the blessing that I have now with the passion for the mountains. So ultimately, earlier he did the right things. We didn't do it the right way. I don't think like he was.
Were those trips positive for you though at the time, or were you just like,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah. The mountains were, no matter where I went, everything shut off. It was always that the side of my head that just like, I kind of felt like I belonged out there. The wilderness accepted me. We did canoe trips, 4-day canoe trips, 10-day canoe trip, that kind of thing. And, Bowen Lakes in northern BC and Broken Islands on the coast and stuff. And so like 10 days, living out of it. And I was fine in those places. But the second I got back again, instantly, it escalated worse and worse and worse and worse every time I came back to what everybody calls normal life, cities and stuff like that.
yeah. So they decided to basically pull the plug on where you were living and move to try to get you out of the trouble that you're getting in.
Yeah, they decided we had moved out of Rundle and moved up to a small area in northwest Calgary, which was a better area. But then they decided, because of my school problems, they said, I think my dad actually got me off of a couple charges at 16 years old. Not got me off, but he explained to the police officer that he was taking me away to Australia for a year, that kind of thing. And I think the officer decided not to charge me for my vandalism and assault and on the principal and stuff like that, because he saw that maybe I was going to go the right way, kind of thing. And we ended up going to Australia, and literally Dad sold the house, sold everything, except for his truck. My brother was with a girl; they were living together. He didn't want to go, and we were supposed to go for a year and ride our bikes around Australia, our pedal bikes. And I think I made it 3 months or 4 months there, and just wanted to go back to my so-called friends and my life in Calgary. And at 16 years old, I ended up getting on a plane and coming home by myself. And then, of course, that's when my first knowing of my brother wasn't on my side. And I was at his house for 3 days. He was supposed to put me up for, at 16 years old, and he kicked me out, and I ended up living on the street for, I think, 3.5 or 4 months at 16. And
Wow.
and then Mom and Dad came back a little bit early from the trip because they knew I was in trouble. And before I could get back to them, I ended up stealing a car and getting putting and getting caught and getting put in juvie, and spent a little while in juvie, and ended up having some sexual trauma from a guard there that was one of the professionals that ended up taking advantage of a 16-year-old kid that a professional that's supposed to protect us, that twice he ended up raping me. And then after that, it just kind of, I got out and mom and dad took me back in. And the thing about this, like, I've never talked about that stuff until a year and a half or 2 years ago. So mom and dad didn't know about that stuff. I held it in for so long, and you hold stuff like that in, you die inside. Literally you die. It's a slow fucking cancer that kills you. Sorry.
No worries.
So,
yeah, it strikes me that it's sad because it's like the things just get amplified over time, right? Like you start out having some trouble, and then you end up hanging out with people that just introduce more trouble, and then you get into systems where people know that they can take advantage of you, and there's shitty people there, right? And then they take advantage of people who they know are victims. Like, people can identify the victims, right? And
and it's like,
victimize.
Fuck, a 16 years old, for Christ's sakes. He wasn't a small dude either. He wasn't like, I'm 5'4". He was 6 foot. Like, he's not, at 16 years old. Like, come on, man. Like, I ended up living with that for a long time, and ended up just fighting people, violence, kind of addicted to violence. It's just, and not even addicted to me. I didn't give a shit about winning. I kind of wanted to die for a long time, and that around that time, I ended up fighting the suicide. That's when that stuff started kicking in, and the schizoaffective disorder started kicking in more and more at that age. And like, it takes perfect storm for those things to kick in, and I absolutely had, I think, about 10 perfect storms. So.
So and what kind of symptoms from the schizoaffective disorder were you experiencing?
Purple tails on cars, voices, delusions, voices with bodies, delusions of grandeur, delusions of, I always crack jokes about being half alien, and like, it's pretty funny for a lot of people because I haven't drank water in 30 years, and people think that it's like, okay, we must be half alien. Like, I don't, and this is that the funny thing is, there's multiple people that you can ask about that will be like, I was in Ecuador with him 2 months and he never touched a drop of water. It's pretty, but yeah, there's that like, in all honesty, that pain and suffering made me who I am today. And yeah, it sucks that I went through that. I've finally found a place that I can kind of rebuild and look at tomorrow, instead of, like, I still fight suicide every day and stuff like that, every single day, 2-3 times a day. But around my kayaking, when I'm on the river, I don't fight it. So that's why I paddle 300 days a year. And then for the past 3-4 years, it's been 275 to 309, and prior to that was 250. And, that kind of thing. It just grew and grew and grew, because it was like, holy crap, I got this thing that stops these demons that isn't cocaine, that's not crack or heroin or meth or, like all these drugs that shut my brain off, that I was never addicted to, but I was addicted to shutting my brain off.
That was the attraction of the drugs, was just that this pain I'm feeling goes away for a little bit if I do these things.
Yeah, even the voice. Well, the voice is just shut off. Like, I actually had a break. Like, some people get to go to sleep at night and enjoy that sleep. I don't ever, like, when I was younger, I was doing an hour sleep at night or every 2 days with no drugs. And I've done 9 days with no drugs, with no sleep, and fully functioned every single day at work and stuff like that.
That's wild.
Man.
And you're saying still even today, you don't sleep much?
Yeah, no. So the blessing about Ecuador, in the past 3 months, I've had like probably once a week where I get 6 hours to 8 hours. And I've never had that in my life. So that tells me I'm doing something fucking right. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, that tells me right there I'm doing. But most of the time I'm like an hour a night. That kind of thing. And like, I still have relapses now because I do a little bit of cocaine and I go to sleep. I'm like the opposite of 99% of people out there, so I still, unfortunately, like, I've never preached cleanliness. I've never preached being clean in my whole 10 years of recovery, because I've always known that I'm going to relapse. I'm like, there's something going to happen, because I've never been addicted to the drugs. Like I've been on heroin for a year, needles, and I walked away from it one day, just said, no, I'm done. I had zero withdrawals. I've been on meth for 2 years and I just walked away from it. It's the addiction of shutting my head off. And that's why I kayak so much, is because that 300 days or that 275 days a year, I don't fight my head. My head is one with me. My voices communicate with each other. They help each other. I've run rapids where I've never seen them before. My voices have guided me through the rapid. It might sound crazy. It might sound, but like I've got tons of friends. I got buddies on Team Walk in Canada, Pierce. He'll tell you it was nerve wracking paddling with me for the first little while for him. He's just like, what the fuck is this guy doing? Like shit like that. Like there's multiple people out there from across North America. My buddies I've got buddies in Colorado that can tell you the same thing. Buddies in Ecuador, friends in the Southeast, they'll all tell you pretty much the same thing, like, hashtag local Benny. That's what it's going down here. But, and it comes from the heart when they say that. That's like, I don't mind that stuff.
Yeah. I'm just curious because I've never spoken with anybody before that's had kind of like voices or seen things, that kind of thing before. What's the experience like? Is it obvious to you that they're not real, or do you have trouble distinguishing?
Well, see, and that's like the common mistake, like not mistake, but common misunderstanding of people that don't know much about it. It's in my head or outside of my head. It's 100% real for me. Other people might not see it, might not hear it, but I live with it every day. So it is real for me. It's not that it's not real. It's just we have to find a way to deal with it. And like
it would be like for your perception of it, it would be indistinguishable from you talking to me right now. The voice would sound the same. It would just be some other voice.
It's the best part about, well, not the best part, but the part for me that I'm kind of, each one of my voices has a body. So like there's 2 in the room right now that are sitting here listening to us in a chair, just sitting right beside us. At first for a long time, it was really hard because I'd go out in the river and I'd look over at somebody and they'd be like looking at me like, what the fuck is he doing? Like, I'd be having a conversation with the sky or right beside me and having this whole conversation. And at first people were just like, whoa, like what's going on? Now people are like, wow, I just got to see Benny Clark talk to his voices. So like the being so open about it has allowed people around me to kind of understand, and as well me to live a little bit better with the acceptance of it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So, like people don't, like we always have we got Benny in the 6, I got 6 voices, 1 through 6, that kind of thing. Used to have 7, that kind of thing. And there's always jokes about it. And I have dark humor with mine. I'm very careful sometimes because I do crack like the sexual abuse stuff. I do it around close friends because I'll like dark humor. I'll crack a joke. Like if I like a good example, I saw somebody walking down the street the other day and I was like, God damn, he was pretty one that got me in. When I was 16, and I was just like, oh my God, I said that out loud. And the 2 girls that were with me, they're friends with, they know me, and they're just like, Jesus, and they were laughing because they understand that it was like but I'm very careful on who I say stuff like that around because I know dark humor can hurt people, and but I grew up with a firefighter, so it's dark humor is the way we deal.
You learned a little from your dad on how to
definitely. I learned a little bit from my dad from that one. Yeah. So.
Well, I do want to get into the kayaking here, but I one other thing that I think would be interesting to talk about is you mentioned you were homeless for a while at 16, and then you told me previously that it happened later, in your 20s as well. And I just feel like it's such a topical conversation right now because it's so front and center. Like you've ever said, it was a problem beforehand, but I think it's just amplified since the pandemic. And you go into pretty much any major city now and you see homeless people all over the place on the street. And I remember this was probably early 2000s or something, but I remember seeing some documentary that was super interesting to me about, I think it was called Dark Days. I'm sure you can still find it.
I think I've seen that actually.
Have you? Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
Cool. Yeah, it was some guy he wasn't even a filmmaker, I don't think, but he moved to New York City and heard that there were people living in these abandoned underground tunnels in New York City. And he got super interested in it and actually I think spent some time just living with them and then decided he wanted to make a film about them. And one of the things that stuck with me from that is, he got so immersed in it, and he said that, 95% plus of these people that are living on the streets in New York City either have mental illness problems or drug problems, and in most cases both, because, they
Mhm.
frequently go hand in hand. But yeah, I'm really curious to hear kind of what your experience was through that and how you handled it and what it felt like to be in that community. Because it is a community, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The only one thing that saved me from still being in that community for a lifetime is my mom and dad. That's literally
Wow.
the only ones. I can't even thank myself for helping get myself get. My mom and dad took me in so many times for the troubles that I was having and all that kind of things. And after a divorce, I ended up like no money, that kind of thing, and ended up just like running away from the safety of my parents' home and just deciding to get away from it again, thinking that I was going to go back to that kind of community that was there. But unfortunately, the side of the street it's a savage place. It's you don't the sleep at night doesn't work. You're sleeping with stuff tied to your feet and tied to your hands, and and you're sleeping with one eye open because there's so many fights, so many muggings, so many beatings, so many. If you're new to it, then they put you into it. It's almost I've never been to adult jail or anything like that, but I can almost like say it's like almost like that the clickiness. There's groups. Excuse me. There's levels to the groups, and if you're new to that, you're put down in the bottom of it. And one of the biggest things I saw was how the women had to survive out there, and it was like fucking savage, man. It was, the like females putting themselves out there just for a couple of and not having a choice. Like there's dudes that force them to do it, and it is a very communal, like very community stricken place, but there's the people that are out there that are there purposely because they know they can make their own money. There's some drug dealers that come in and go to that level to keep people around, to keep them kind of segregated and sell the drugs to, cheap. That's what meth is such an apparent that and what's carfentanil. That's why those are so apparent out there, because they're cheap and they're easy to sell to people and they get locked on it. And then there's no getting anybody out of it once you're in that situation. So if it wasn't for my mom and dad, at 16, it was really hard because I was stealing cars to try to get money so I could eat. I was collecting money. I was selling drugs. I was, collecting money for people and doing those things. And that was not okay for me. That was not, but it was the only way. Like, I'm not that person. Popular, contrary to belief, like with some people in my life, I'm a good human being. I'm a really good asshole, but I'm also a really, really good I'm a really, really good human being. It just all depends on how you treat me. So I promise I will out asshole you but I will respect you and love you, and I'll take a bullet for the people in my lives. Like I will jump in front of cars for people, and that doing the things that I had to do at 16 or 17 years old, 16 years old before I went to juvie. I wouldn't wish that upon my worst enemy. I wouldn't. Yeah, like the abuse that you go through, even like just. Yeah, there's so much bad in it. There's so much trauma in it that never ever leaves you,
Yeah, that's intense.
But there's a lot of good people out there too. That are stuck out there. That like there's like when I drive down to Colorado from the border all the way down to BV, every single street corner I drive by is a vet or somebody that suffers mental illness that. Like, don't take this wrong way, but your government is responsible for, and they don't do a fucking thing about it. They do. They like these guys have gone to places in this world and seen hell and blood, gore, guts, and veins in their teeth, and they're sitting on. Canada's like that too as well. Not as bad, but the systems here are just so savage that we have this. Apparently, that Canada is like the best country in the world, and we have free healthcare and blah blah. Well, that's bullshit, man. It's not the greatest. I'm pissed at my country right now with the things that they're doing, and there's another reason I'm in Ecuador, because they bailed on me. I'm done, So
yeah, well, it's way over my pay grade to solve that problem, but
same here, man. That's
but it's I agree with you in that we could be trying a lot harder, and hopefully that attitude changes, because there was. Right. We used to have mental health hospitals that people could go to, and then they got a bad reputation and people didn't want to pay for them, and they just shut them all down in the US, and then people ended up in jail instead and on the streets instead. And
Yeah, yeah,
that's obviously not a solution to the problem.
yeah, absolutely, yeah. And especially now with the pandemic, you're starting to see more people with like no jobs, no nothing, because it's hard to get jobs, good paying jobs. You have inflation that is like ridiculous, but no pay raise, that kind of thing, and people are starting to struggle so much with in Canada and the States, and it's we got winter there. Like it's not like South America where we can, and I'm not saying it's easier down here or harder down here. Just there's other ways to to live down here that are
Sure.
yeah. So
there's a whole there's this whole movement around nomadic life where people are just turning these cars into vans, and they move around to work at Amazon warehouses to earn some money, and then head down in the winter to Arizona to live cheaply for a while. Or there's people are trying to figure it out, but it's ugly.
I just spent time doing funny that like Mike set you up with this interview with me. I lived in a sailboat too. Mike was the guy that I talked to about building. I bought a sailboat right after the pandemic started because I couldn't live van life anymore because it was province to province. They were always on me. And then I ended up buying a sailboat because it was good for my head because I had privacy and I didn't have cops banging on my door all the time. And then I ended up rebuilding the boat. I literally just sold it before I came to Ecuador. I did a bunch of sailing up there and stuff. But it's that lifestyle is extremely hard now too in North America. That van life. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, let's get into the kayaking. So tell me how you started. How'd you find out about it?
I found out about it many, many years before I started kayaking. When I was hiking on Cataract Creek in southern Alberta, I used to see kayakers go by me on like class 4 and there's a couple class 5 rapids, 25-foot drop in like these old long ass pointy boats that I was like, what are these guys doing, man? Going off 25-foot waterfalls and running like slides and stuff. And I was like, what the heck is this? I want to try that one day. But I never ever got around it. That was when I was like 10, 12, 14, 15, 16, 18. Never got around to it until I finally had my last downfall in Calgary where I was just like, I need to get out of this. And I ended up, my buddy owed me some money and he was a really good friend of mine. And because he wouldn't want to pay me, I ended up kicking his door in and stealing like an ounce of cocaine from him and for my debt. And I ended up doing it for the next 4 or 5 days after that. And in the middle of that, I had this epiphany of like, wow, I'm going to die if I keep on this track. So I ended up buying a van. Mom and dad helped me. I moved out to my uncle's property on a farm just outside of Sundre, Alberta. And we had this Red Deer River, which is like class 3 plus big water pool drop. And I bought a Piranha 420 and lived on my uncle's property, ran barbed wire fence for a guy named Paul Pernick, and kayaked every morning before work, every day after work. I think my first time there, I swam 18 times in an hour because I didn't know how to row. I did one lesson for a stroke clinic with a buddy of mine, and it was a very good friend of mine now. And ended up at the stroke clinic, and I couldn't roll, but I kept wanting to do seal launches. Seal launches got bigger, but my roll never showed up. So I just kept swimming. And the next day I couldn't show up for work. I was so goddamn sore. I was just like in bed, like, oh my God. And I called this guy named Jim McAllister who run the Sundre Paddle Club. I was like, Jim, I need a fucking roll right now. And then I ended up spending like a week or something with him. I ended up getting the roll 50% of the time. And then, after that, I ended up going out to a couple places, Elbow River and Sutherland Falls, and running class 5 stuff in a Piranha 420 that, I could barely fucking roll, survival boating.
Tell me about that, because I was looking up Sutherland Falls. That's a big
Sutherland is the cleanest waterfall, the cleanest 60 in the world. Still to this day, my first year kayaking in a Piranha 420 has been my best fucking line on it. And I've run it 100 times since then. It's still to this day my best line. I was with my dad. He was working like running, just walking with a throw rope for me. And I ended up, technically it was my second waterfall. Technically it was my second or third waterfall because there was a 30-footer above that. And I think it was first D'd in 2001 by Corey Box and Scott Findell, I believe, and this was like 2005. And I ended up running the upper drop and a little bit of the creek above it. And I was standing on the top of Sutherland Falls, which is where you stand from the scouting. It's probably 70 feet, 65, 70 feet, looking down on it. And I was looking at it for about 15, 20 minutes. And Dad's getting impatient. He's like, well, so like are you going to do this? I'm like, I don't know. It's like 40 feet. I don't know. I don't know if this is a good, And he's like, all right, well, I'll be down at the bottom with the rope and everything. And where you stand, you turn around, you walk around to the trail, and it's like off the river right, and you just walk down to this trail and then go to the bottom. There's a good pool, but there's a nasty rapid after it with a nasty undercut. And if it's not at high flows, you're going to take your head off in this undercut. And I didn't even see that. And Dad was like, all right, well, I'll see you at the bottom. I thought he was going to turn around, walk around, and go down. And then the motherfucker jumps off and cannonballs into the goddamn pool. It's just like, I'm like, what in the wide world of fucks is going on here? Like, I was just like, what is happening here? And then, of course, I think my dad was 54 or 52 or something like that. It was like 18 years ago. Well, 2005 or whatever, 2004. And I was just like, well, God damn it, now I got to run it. And from that day on, I never, ever took my dad out as safety after that because I didn't want to be watching my dad do something. I'm like, well, now I got to do it. But again, still from this to this day, it was the best line I've ever had. Like I ran that drop and I skipped out the bottom, eddied out on the right, and boom, didn't even flip. And it was in a Piranha 420, which is a playboat. So, and I've awesome. Run that. I've got a Red Bull photo of that one. It's like in Red Bull Lume. It's like an infrared shot, like red trees and stuff, and coming off it. And I still didn't even come close. And I was like probably 50 to plus 70, if give or take time running it. I've run it so much, like 3, 4, 5, 6 times a year. 18 years ago. So yeah, maybe more than that. There's some days we do 5 laps, 6 laps on it. It's a park and huck. It's the best park and huck in the world.
Call that beginner's luck.
Yes, absolutely. I survived because of beginner's luck. My dad always said I had bad luck, but there's every so often I get out of an undercut that I shouldn't get out of, and I get draws for the Grand Canyon permits. I've had 6 in the past 5 years. So
there you go. See, maybe you're unlucky in all of life except for kayaking. That's the way I see it. Yeah, stick to kayaking. That's awesome. That's an awesome story. Is that thing a hard hit? 60 feet is a long ways down. It wasn't a hard hit at all. If you run it right, it's definitely a hard. If you over rotate or you boot, we've had multiple broken backs and compressed spines on it. And the problem with it is at low water it has an auto boof. I like it at higher water when it's like pillow talk, when I can like see the safety of my mother's arms at birth at the bottom. I'm here, that's the way I like it at higher flow. And I actually ran it with Sal Montgomery last year, UK boater for Piranha. She's badass, and we ran it probably the top 5 highest I've ever run it, and she crushed it twice. Screwed her first line up, and she landed a little bit sideways, and she's like, "Well, yeah, can I do it again?" I'm like, "Okay, yes, please don't do that again." But yeah, she crushed it the second lap. She killed it, man. A female running that drop is so cool to watch. I think it was one of my favorite things to watch I've ever watched. So yeah, that's cool. So tell me about that though, because you start, you're going out with your dad to run your first waterfalls and stuff. It sounds like you were largely on your own, just trying to pick it up. How much of the paddling community did you start engaging, or when did you?
The paddling community, I tried to engage with all of the paddling community every time I was around, and the community wanted nothing to do with me. The funny thing is, like the paddling community back then nearly killed me with my suicide, like how they treated me and stuff like that. But ultimately the same kayaking community saves my life now, which is a crazy way to look at it. But even the guys that treated me like shit back then, the cliquey ones, they ended up, when their crew broke up, they ended up calling me to come paddle with me because I was still boating. There's that good Eminem saying out there, "I was here before you and I'll be here way after you." I think he says in one of his songs. And I've been around a long time, man. And I don't plan on going anywhere. I'm not like, kayaking isn't something that I'm going to quit. So unless it takes me, which I'd be blessed with if the river takes me. I don't want it to happen, but I'd be blessed with that. It was really, really cliquey in Alberta and BC. We have this sticker that we used to do back in the day. I don't know if you ever, what Whistler, BC is? It's
What do
like
you,
Whistler,
what do you
like
mean?
where you go to Canada kayak. It's like it's the siphon. Like everybody comes in there, they get stuck there. It's the perfect water, the perfect rock,
Oh,
the perfect booth, perfect everything. But we had this sticker that was like it was a middle finger sideways and said Whistler's that way. Because once people went there, it was just like they just turned into these like
that's the
pretentious,
attitude.
clickiness guys, right? Almost
Yeah.
like Aspen people, almost like Aspen people, that kind of thing. But yeah,
Yeah.
they always crushed. Like they were always hard on me. Sit at the fire. And they're always bad mouthing me, talking to me like, the guy's going to die. He's running solo. And I'd have like what I called the four horsemen of the apocalypse of kayaking, which was my friend Simon, who still sponsors me to this day, and Chris Ryman, Garrett Quinn, and one other guy. And they used to protect me at the fire when I wasn't there. They'd be like, well, if you think he's crazy, you're going to die, man, teach him how to kayak, take him out. And they're like, no, he's fucking crazy. We want nothing to do with him. And then they were like, shut the fuck up then. Stop talking, like leave him alone. If you guys don't want to help him out, stop bitching about him at the fire when he's out doing things that you were worried about. That kind of attitude. We had the crew called the A team, and I named him the A team. What everybody thought it was because they were like kind of the best crew around. They're the class 5 board. I called them the A team, but I called them because it's the asshole team. So everybody in the company say, yeah, the A team. Little did they know they were calling them the asshole team for me. So it worked out pretty good. But yeah, the community I had a pretty hard upbringing. Stories being told about me that never happened. And being blamed for things that I never, like Cataract Creek, my favorite creek, 351 laps on it to this year now. There's a class 6 at the top of it, but I've run it like 20, 25 times, so I don't really think it's a class 6. But anyway, it goes into a big undercut. It's like a 15-foot drop, but all the water, 3/4 of it goes into an undercut, like an undercut siphon. And we had 2 people run past me, the Yeti. I was yelling at them to get in. They went over it and both went into Hercules, they call it. And there's a 25-foot drop right after that pool called Titan with a massive undercut on it. And I was running up there yelling at my buddies saying, hey, fucking, we're getting bodies, get your fucking ropes. Like I thought people were dead. And we got up there and they're both sitting in the pool going, whoa, what just happened? Like,
Wow.
totally giggly. And the French guy runs off and ends up swimming below that. And I yelled at the guy, Tyler, you got to go. It's 25 foot. He's like, what is it? I'm like, it's tight. And he's like, fuck that. No way I'm going. I'm like, all right, sweet. We'll stay in there for life. And I'm going to get in my boat because the pool is 10 to 15 feet lower. You have to do a seal launch to run the 25 footer. So this guy, and then finally he went. But yeah, anyways, like 15 years later, after the story of that went around, a really good friend of mine had said, yeah, back in the day, he's telling a story about Benny running Hercules blind. And my other buddy's like, dude, that's not what happened, man. You guys got to stop this shit to him. Like, he didn't do that. He was the one, So it was always stories of things that people wanted to talk about me, and some people made stories up. I've sat beside people at the fire that were telling a story about Benny Clark. They didn't even recognize me, and I was sitting right fucking beside and we're talking about, I had a friend that we were on the river in a big log jam, and back in that time I was scuba diving too as well with my ex or my wife at the time. So I took scuba gear and I dove underneath a log jam and I checked it out. I was checking out, just wanted to check it out. So I dove up and I knew it was just river level, right? And then later that week, me and my buddy were kayaking. He ends up swimming and going into the log jam. And I swam, like I got out of the boat and grabbed him, put him up on top of the log jam. And then I swam underneath the log jam. And because it was like right on the surface, and it wasn't, but I had already seen it all. Like what people don't know is I had seen underneath that. I knew it was
clear.
One piece of wood was actually underwater, maybe like a little couple of pieces. It was all just above, so I knew I could get under there. This guy's telling this story, and my buddy's just showing up. Who's the guy that I apparently saved? I don't really think I saved him, but he does. And he walks up, and this guy's, yeah, man, I was fucking there. Benny Clark saved this guy, like pulled him up on the wood. And he's going off, going off. And then all of a sudden, my buddy shows up. He's like, that was me, and you weren't there. And then I took my hoodie off and looked at him. I was like, what's up, dude, Benny Clark? And he's like, it was so mind-boggling that actually could happen. I've dealt with that for a long time. People, misconstrue my words or misunderstand my words, and they take what they think they heard, and they, and then the stories build, and it's, I've just stopped fighting them and just let them go. My dad said that I was put on this planet for 2 reasons: one, to piss people off, one, make people laugh. All they have to do is decide which one they want to be, because I'm a consistent motherfucker.
This story though, it makes me reflect a little bit, because I'm I think I'm anything but elitist, but I mean, it sounds to me like there's like, okay. I mean, we've all seen like if this happens in kayaking all the time, right? There's people that come in freaking hot as hell, don't know what they're doing. They're getting into trouble. You can see it's coming. You can see something bad happening from a mile away. Sometimes people warn them. Sometimes they just avoid them. But like, how do that is a legitimate problem, and it sounds like
Absolutely.
you probably had some of this going on too, right? Like that.
Yeah,
There's
absolutely. Yeah.
some legitimacy to what they were saying, even if they're blowing it out of proportion and misrepresenting you and stuff.
Absolutely, and like I'll never ever disagree with what they were believing in the first year, but all they had to do was tell me clubs existed, or like be good to me on the side of the river and say, "Hey, man, I'd love to take you paddling. Like, let's tone it down a notch." Because I had no fucking clue what I was. I grew up around Swiftwater Rescue on the Bow River. My dad was aquatic search and rescue in the Calgary Fire Department, so we were around that shit my whole life. I've been a canoe. Like, I'm not scared of whitewater. I don't, like here in front of 10 people, I ended up having to take my PFD off in a little hole because I was on a ducky with a client, and like we'll go over it, and we both go in the hole. I had to push her and the ducky out of the hole because I'm not going to let her go. I knew I was going to get out, but the thing was just a perfect storm where I had to unbuckle my NRS, pull it up over my head, and then ball up and sprawl and then put it back on to float out. And there's like 10 people watching me do this, and I had like a 25 seconds underwater. And I was like, wow, that was fucking wicked. I needed that. I needed the ass kicking. I'm a firm believer that we need to be humbled on the river, and this was on it was on the Hoyin Hondachi confluence, the first hole, and it's not a big hole, but it was just a perfect storm for me because I was on the ducky with a client, and this was actually Christmas Day. No, I was actually going to message you about that. I was like, hey, funny thing, you guys talked about this on your podcast,
right?
And here I am. The funniest thing is I'm like swimming afterwards, and people are just like, man, you're dislocated. I'm like, no, I'm holding my PFD on. And they're like, what the fuck happened? God bless the NRS vest for that, because if I was in an Astral, I wouldn't have been able to do that.
That's an interesting thought, huh? Yeah.
But yeah, it's like I firmly believe that people were like in every right. I don't think that anybody should just allow somebody in their Class 5 crew. That's not what I'm saying about that. But the treatment of people when they come into the sport, I think had needed to change back then. I still think it needs to change a little bit. Yeah. It's way better than it used to be.
I think I'm glad you're calling this out, actually, because when I've talked about it, I kind of put the rose-colored glasses on during this podcast and stuff, and talk about how great the paddling community is and how it's such an awesome group of people, which is true. I think like on compared to your average person in the world, you're more likely to get a good person, in the kayaking community. But the reality is people are still people, and there's
people are still fucking assholes.
The petty stuff that goes on, and tribalism and all that stuff. Yeah. And that's good to reflect on, I think, to think about that, because we should. And I think what I hear you saying is you're like, if people would have just talked to me about it and said like, hey, I think you're going a little overboard. Like, can I give you some tips on how to approach this? It sounds like you're saying you would have been receptive to that.
Absolutely. I would have taken it all in, because it would have been people accepting me into something that I was trying to get into, and like you can see, nobody can see me on this probably, but I'm covered in head tattoos. I've got finger tattoos. And, back at that time when I started coming into it, I didn't really have a bunch of tattoos, but I was still a little angry dude that just came out of the street. And, I'm that guy that, I want to figure it out right now. If you're going to be an asshole at the fire, then let's figure it out, and then let's drink together. Let's sort it out and get it over with. If you like with Tony today, like this kid I wrestled today, I choked him out in under 1 minute, but it was like he'd been pushing me for like 4 or 5 days, like push. I'm like, all right, dude, it's all right. Let's do this. I'll show you what old age and treachery gets you, a little prick. I'm just like, this is it. Your ego needs to get toned down a notch. And I ended up now, and he's sitting down there being very humble and quiet for the night. So somebody did that to me back in the day, and I don't mean just like wrestling. I just mean like find a way to communicate with me and say, hey, man, like, welcome to the sport. Come on in. And even now, I don't think – that's why I love Colorado so much, because Colorado accepted me in. I went down there my first year down there, and I went in the Deer Hammer, and I was suffering for like 3 days, and I sat outside, and Nick Blake came out. He was back then. He owns Little Daisy now, and he came out, and he's like, hey, man. He's like, you doing okay, man? He's like, I'm like, yeah, no, I don't need a drink right now. He's like, no, are you okay? Like, are you all right? Like, you seem like you're struggling. And he ended up sitting down with me and having a 20-minute conversation with me.
Oh,
and then I was like, yeah, man, I want to go kayak. And he's like, okay, cool. Post on the page, that typical post on the page. I'm like, all right, sweet. This is just like everywhere else. And I give my number. And not even 10 minutes later, before I was finished my whiskey that I ordered after that, I get a phone call saying, yeah, we're going on Gore Canyon. I'm like, all right, sweet, I'm in. And there was like no apprehension, no nothing. I think a couple of them had looked at a few of my photos, that kind of thing, and talked to there's a few people that knew me, but still, to be like Gore Canyon, I'm still arguing it's a 4+. I don't think it's a class 5 because they legally, that's another conversation.
At normal levels, definitely.
Not 1,800. I mean, not 1,800 to do that. That's for sure. But yeah, anyways, they took me out on there, and I found this community all of a sudden that just accepted me in with none of that judgmental bullshit. And I'm sure if I screwed up on Gore Canyon, they would have been like, stand off, that kind of thing. But they left the decision up to me. They told me what the river was, and they let me make the choice, and they made the choice to accept me into their group. And it was awesome. I'm not saying they have to accept into that level. I just mean like, clubs are one of the best things out there because they get people involved in the community and stuff like that. But I think as a class 5 boater or not, but like just an all around world paddler, world traveler, in the higher end of paddling, I think it's our responsibility to help accept these people that come into the community. So, and not be closed off and not talk about the beaters and not post about the beaters and not talk about our friends that have passed away, and I don't think that's good for the sport. This shit happens in the sport. People die in the sport. It's a hard sport on humans, and people have bad swims and they run away because sometimes people like us take a friend out that shouldn't be out on that class 4 and they have a savage swim and they run away. And they never come back to kayaking. I don't think that's okay for the sport. And that happens too much.
Oh, it happens all the time, right?
The river for me is such a peaceful place that it saves my life every day. And I don't want to take that away from somebody else. And I think it's our responsibility to help people get into this sport wherever you're at, and in a safe manner. And we have the knowledge and the power to do that with people so they can do it safe in class 3, to do it safe. My buddies in Canada call me the most inclusive class 5 boater you'll ever meet. I cancel class 5 days with my buddies with Team Waka and the Aquabotic boys. I cancel those days to go out with class 2 and class 3 boaters. I teach mainly for free in Canada. You throw me a bottle of whiskey or a pack of smokes, and I'm happy because the best thing in the world is when I get to look back and see those smiles that I'm giving that those people are experiencing, because I get the same thing and I don't ever want to take it away from people. And I think too many people in this sport don't think about that enough.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great message. I think that's definitely true. And then we talk about why the sport doesn't grow. Of course, some people would say it's kind of nice that it doesn't grow, which in some ways is true, but but that's
for
right?
sure.
Like, there aren't, I was just talking to someone recently, like there aren't good inroads, at least in the U.S. It sounds like it's different, when you go into Europe and some other places. But in the U.S., there aren't good inroads for people. If you have a mentor, you can a good mentor who's not going to do what you just said, which happens probably 90% of the time. It's like, oh, follow me, bro. It's no problem.
Let's get to go. Yeah.
Destroyed, and they're like, screw this sport, man. This sucks.
Yeah.
But I think that spending a little time, I appreciate that. I think it's sort of our responsibility in some ways as people that have been in the sport for a long time to go try to pay it back, like help
Absolutely.
out somebody that's enthusiastic and is trying to get into it. And as a Colorado boater, I like your message. The Colorado boaters are great, but in reality, it might just be that we're all beaters out here and we can't, can't tell the difference.
A lot of Colorado boys. I've never seen guys like, for when I first went down there, I was like, wow, where's my safety? What the fuck is this? Like, this is insane. But then I'm like, get my ass kicked on Obi Joyful on the 20-footer. I'm getting beat in there. And all of a sudden there's a guy in a boat beside me paddling towards me. I'm like, where'd you come from? You already ran this and you were like the Eddie down. How'd you get to me? It's like Colorado boaters have this ability to all of a sudden dragonfly themselves to get to you, even from like 2 eddies down. The boat safety that Colorado boaters can run is astronomical. It's the best I've seen for actual boat safety in the boat. But people are just like, no, we're just going to run this. We're going to route it. But like you do that in BC, you're literally just route it. You're chasing people down. But in like Colorado, it's like almost like a boom, 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 like you're switching spots. Somebody run a waterfall, bang, sit out, eddy out, and then the other ones would keep going. He'd take up tail and bang, bang, and then Colorado was great for that. I love that kind of boat, whereas everybody's kind of, looking out for themselves. But I think that ability for us to we have the ability to read whitewater a lot better than most people, like that at our level of boating. And we have the ability to teach. We have the ability to pass on our knowledge. And I think giving that to class 3 boaters instead of just, hey, just follow me and make them survive a boat, I think the ability to give them the ability to read whitewater, get them out and scout something, say, how many currents do you see in this? Because there's not just fucking one current in the river. There's 20 currents. There's 6 eddies. There's so many different things that people don't at that level don't see. We have the ability to show them that. And we don't ever, a lot of us don't show them that stuff. No.
Yeah. It's a huge part of running rivers. Well, let's divert a little bit from community to non-community, because
What?
one of the things that I don't know that you mentioned to me, but I'm sure people are well aware of it too, is that you do a lot of solo boating, and solo boating's kind of a controversial subject in the world of kayaking, and it sounds like a lot of the solo boating you do too is not necessarily easy solo boating. You'll go paddle some pretty stout whitewater. Obviously you're a proponent of solo boating, but what's your mindset on it, and what do you think of it for yourself and for other people?
I think I'm a firm believer that that's soloing in any fringe sport is kind of a touchy subject. Number one, I don't think a lot of people like talking about it, and I don't think we talk about it enough. I think the guys that solo boat, most out there, they just keep it from people, and they don't really talk about, and we know people are going to solo boat. We know that. So again, that community thing to join to that, we need to talk more about it, because I think it's something when you get to a certain level, you make choices that allow you to do, a certain amount of solo boating. And I believe that there's also people out there that need it, like me. Like in that 250 to 300 days a year, at least 75% of my boating is solo. It's solo class 4 plus, 4 or 5. I do a lot of water. I've run Sutherland Falls by myself. I've run Metlaco by myself. I've run Punch Bowl by myself. I've run the North Fork by myself. I've run Obi Joyful, Ewell Creek solo. I've run a lot of stuff like that. And I find that I make the best decisions. As I mentioned to you before, when I'm out with my boys, my buddies, my equation is literally 45 to 55% confidence that I need to make that rapid. That might sound a little bit low, like you had said, like mine, but I'm confident that my homies can get to me and do that. But when I'm solo, if I'm not 110% positive I can make that move, I walk it. I've learned how to make better decisions solo. I attribute that to my group boating now, to my teaching, to my instructing, all of that. The way I see whitewater now is because of my solo boating and how much safer I've become. I'm doing that now. Like in BC, I don't just route stuff when I'm solo. I get out and I check for wood. Like BC is pretty known for just wood appearing out of nowhere. And same with PNW and and all that. Most places are and I really believe for me, my mental health healing it coincides with my solo boating, because it's like life for me. When I'm struggling and I'm not confident, I'll eddy out, get a safe place on the river. I do that in life too. If I'm struggling in town or whatever, or teaching people or whatever, I get away from it. I get away from the situation, get a safe place, and just enjoy. When I want to learn new things, I get out, I get into that current, and I send it. I do that. Everything on the river goes towards my life, and solo boating has helped me with my mental illness astronomically. And if I didn't solo boat, I would not be the human I am today with my mental illness. I would still be struggling a lot more deeply than I am now. And that for other people, I think, do it the right way. Start off slow. Don't just get into class 4. If you're paddling at the 4 plus level, don't start soloing 4 plus by yourself. Get in there, start soloing some class 3s, that kind of thing. And if you're going to do those, and then kind of build your way up. I'm quite confident. I didn't just start soloing, but I shouldn't say it. I did. And I survived, and I shouldn't have survived. And I don't think I should have done it that way, but I didn't know what existed out there again. But I think other people have every right to do those things as long as they're making the choices, and as long as they're representing it the right way, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Well, I'm trying to I'm kind of trying to hear what you're saying in terms of how, for you, you have a very different experience when you're solo on the river versus with a group. And I think kind of what I heard you say was that in some ways there's an anxiety or something that can come with being in a group where you feel like you have to be part of the group schedule and you can't necessarily just do what feels right for you at the time, and that difference, you know, can make solo
Yeah.
boating a more relaxing or healing experience.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I feel more responsible when I'm with a group. When I'm by myself, I have responsibility for myself and myself only. And a lot of people might say, like, you're like, well, what about the family at home and what about your friends and stuff like that? Well, I can tell you this: every single person in my life that knows me and loves me and paddles with me, they know if something happens to me on the river, I'm at fucking peace. They know that if they can't rescue me, like, and I know they'll still struggle with it, but they do know that if something happens on the river, they know that I'm okay. I'm in a like I've had a good run, and I didn't die from my illness. I didn't become a statistic. When I'm with other people, I feel responsible for the group, everybody in the group, and I feel responsible for leading. You know, because of my 18 years of kayaking, if I'm paddling with, and even class 5 with guys that are slaying it, 5 years of boating, I still feel responsibility for those guys that are better kayakers than me, but have less experience in those situations and stuff like that. I don't know if that makes any sense, but like
Yeah,
for
it
me, it's
does.
solo boating. It's like total. I get to chill out, have out of body experiences, and see myself paddle, and sit on the side of the have lunch by myself and talk to the fucking my trees and my people that aren't nobody gets to see and stuff, and I'm way more at peace. I get to concentrate on my head and my head alone when I'm solo boating. When I'm with others, I don't feel. Most of the time, unless I'm with my class 5 crew, but anytime I get on the river with a crew, I'm pretty much the one that's leading it, and I'm always the one that I'm pretty much solo by anyway because I'm usually the highest level of paddler because I'm taking class 4 people out. I'm doing a lot, and those people aren't experienced enough to maybe save me if I get into trouble. You
Hmm.
know,
Yeah.
if that, and it's not against them. It's just the experience level, right? So,
No,
and
I
I do more
understand.
paddling with class 3, 4 people than I do typically with class 5 people because I like my solo boating. So.
Hmm. Have you had those experiences with a group where something went wrong and you felt responsible for it, or is it?
I my second year kayak, I lost a. I've lost. That's a hard one because I've lost pretty much from my second year kayaking on. I've been close to or close to the people that just lost somebody,
Oh
and
wow.
I've had like my second year kayaking. We held my friend's head above water after he got broached in a rock or pinned in a rock, and then the current it was starting to rise a bit and it shifted and ended up squishing his legs even more and pinning him. And what we didn't know at the time was he rotated. His head was downstream. We thought he was with his feet forward, but he had got twisted and his legs were broken. So he was facing
Oh,
down. So
oh,
we held him up, and he ended up. We held him up for 35 minutes, and he ended up the water come above his head, and he passed away with
oh,
us. And
that's
then
awful.
15 or 20 minutes later, rescue had showed up, and that was pretty much that was. But it was too late, and I've been around thing where like I knew I couldn't do nothing about that. I knew
Do,
that I couldn't do anything about it except for be there. But
yeah.
I still felt responsible.
Do you
Because
think with your sorry with your mental health history, do you think that affects you more than the average person dealing with an experience like that?
this might sound cold, but I think it's easier for me
Hmm.
um, because of the things I see in my nightmares and the things that
Hmm.
I've seen in my past and the things that I deal with in my head. I think like I don't deal with death the same as a lot of people. I see like even looking back on it now, I see like a friend that I'm kind of envious of because the river he got to
Hmm.
leave with the river. You know what I mean? And like I
Yeah.
said, it might sound cold, but that's it sucked that it was that long. But I hope one day the river accepts me fully like that. And yeah, I think with my mental illness, I think it's definitely easier for the death side of it. I have the ability to say goodbye to people or not to say hi to people every day.
Hmm.
Like when I drink a whiskey and I'm down to the bottom, I take a little flask of whiskey on the river with me. And I pour it in the river for the boys and the girls that can't be there no more. I have like tobacco with me and I put in the river for the ones that can't be there, that kind of thing. And I think that way dealing with it has been really, really good for me that way. So we've had a lot of, as you know, we've had a lot of death around kayaking. It's a savage sport. Dirt hurts, man. But when we crash, our swim is our crash is just the beginning. We have so much after that we have to deal with, right?
Yeah, it can go from just fine to horrific in a split second.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think I know the answer to this question, but kind of leads to, yeah. Do you think that because of your, mental history, your history with suicide and everything, that you are willing to take a lot more risks for yourself when you're paddling than a normal person would?
I think it's actually not more risk I think I make better choices for myself and I take less risks by myself. But when other people are involved, my mental illness allows me to take a lot bigger risks for other people. Like plastic. I've chased plastic in Ecuador. I had a couple of people down here 3 years ago, and they got on the middle Hondachi, and I had told them, I was like, look, it's a little too high. We shouldn't do this. Me and actually Mike's brother, Andy Nash, they were like, yeah, no, we're good to go. I'm like, fucking, and I wasn't going to get on it, but I was like, these guys are getting on it. I got to go with them. We ended up having a swimmer right at the beginning, and I chased the boat like a half a kilometer and ended up getting pinned in between the boat and my boat and ended up having to pull. I swam, and I'm in the jungle by myself at medium to high flow with potential of getting higher. And instead of me like just getting myself to shore, I swam out, got her boat, paddled it to shore, swam it to shore, got it out, and then swam back after my boat and got my boat out and pulled it out, and then walked 3K back up the jungle and popped to the jungle like, hey, what's up? And they're like, what, solo. Like if I go solo, I wouldn't have chased that boat. I would have just like, all right, now I got to figure out how to get the fuck out of here. I think like the decisions I make solo, I think that's why I like it for when I'm with people, because I will sacrifice a lot more, to with that illness. But by myself, solo allows me to make better decisions where I'm not doing that to myself. I don't mind sacrificing myself for other people, but if I do it for myself, it almost feels like a suicide attempt, if that makes any sense at all. Yeah, if I go out and try to swim after a boat, it's like, why I'm trying to die right now. Like, what the fuck is, that kind of thing. So,
yeah. Well, I want to transition a little bit. You told me some pretty cool stories about your dog that you had. It sounds pretty unique, and it was actually just front of mind because I just put out an episode with Brad Higginbotham, and he's super cool guy, and he was talking about how he tried to take his dog once when he was just trying to get back into kayaking after living in LA, and it was a total disaster. His dog was like jumping in the river, getting pinned on stuff, and at some point he was like, man, I'm just going to like stop at every rapid, walk my dog around, tie him to a tree, go back up and run the rapid. And it took him like all day long to get through this run. And it was, and it sounds like you've at least had similar attempts, but more successful. Like, tell me about your dog, man. It sounds like a super cool dog.
So I had Loki and Digit. Digit was actually, by the sounds of it, exactly like his dog, where he would just run out in the fucking river and just happy lab, try to lick everything, and it didn't do. Whereas Loki was like more of a methodical, awesome chocolate lab. And I traded a guy, I can't remember his name, he's out of Ontario. He was in Alberta, and he was talking about, they training dogs and wanted to train dogs for like swiftwater rescue, that kind of thing. And I was like, well, yeah, sweet. I got a chocolate lab that I'd love to do that with. And then I ended up trading him kayaking courses for him to help me train Loki for swiftwater rescue. So this dog would actually end up, like at the Briley Fest, the beginners would swim, and people would be blowing whistles, kayakers would be chasing, and all of a sudden my dog out of nowhere just fly in between the kayakers fast, get to the swimmer, and then you grab the PFD, the person would grab the PFD and then the gear, and my dog would pull you to shore. It kind of went a little bit more extreme after that, though, because for my solo boating, I kind of used them as safety. And like Elbow Falls is just Elbow Creek is like a local Calgary creek that's really easy to get to. It's like a 25-minute lap. It's got 3 drops on it, like a 4+ and then a 5, well, depending on the flows, and then the slide of 4+, and great river. and I would go out there and run it solo nonstop all the time. But my dog would run the shore, and he'd run the shore beside me, and he'd get out and watch me run the waterfall, and then he'd cliff jump beside, and then he'd like swim. And when he'd see rapids come up, he'd get out and run on the shore. And or if I'd whistle at him, tell him to out, he'd get out and he'd run the shore. And there was a couple of times where he thought I was in trouble on the waterfall because I went over the broad, what we call Broadway, which is like a big green tongue down the center of the horseshoe. Mm-hmm. And I went over that upside down, and he swam out to get me.
No way.
He came over the Broadway with me, and both of us woke up swimming beside each other. Like,
oh no.
So, and Loki like getting me, but still getting me on the boat, getting me to shore and stuff. And I had a pretty bad incident on the Notch long time ago, I think. And it kind of ruined the river for Loki, because after this incident, Loki just wanted to save everything. He'd paddle up, or he'd swim the sup boards and grab the sup board by the teeth, and really? His teeth, and pull him to shore. And no matter what, the incident like ruined the river for him. So I didn't do it to Digit, and I felt really bad for Loki because it wasn't fun for him anymore. But anyways, I went into an undercut on the Notch, and I was in there for a minute and a half, 2 minutes, like in and out of breath, getting beat down. You'd come out into the undercut, into the hole. My boat would end up coming in the hole and push me back into the undercut. So I was fighting my boat at the same time, and the same thing, Piranha 420 in a creek, getting beat up in this thing. And as I get researched, I realized that the boat was screwing me over here. So I ended up trying to figure out how to push off the boat the second I went back in the hole. And when I did that, I got out, and somehow that pushed the boat deep. It came up, and then there's another undercut on the left with a rock. And I hit the rock, and I felt my boat touch my back before, and it was going to pin me. So I kind of pushed the boat off of me, but it ended up wrapping my arm around the rock and dislocated my elbow like a pop. And then right above is where Loki was standing, and right after that is called a rapid called the Split Decision. It's an island, and there's two pathways. Typically not bad, but the right side was full of wood at this time. And I ended up Loki jumped in the river, and I grabbed his jacket. And me and him ended up going through all the wood. He got stitches in his body and blah, blah, blah. Ooh. Somehow he got me out. Like we both got out somehow and got to the car and ended up in the Strathmore Hospital, which is outside of Calgary on the opposite end of a million person city of where I was. But I'd been there before. So my mind just pushed me to there, and ended up waking up, like getting treated for secondary drowning. And, where's my dog? And because it was like late at night, I showed up there. The nurse was like, no, your dog's in the car. He's doing really good. We called the vet. Vet got and put stitches in him, and he's sitting in the car, and the nurses would go out and check on him. And so, yeah, it was like a whole epidemic, but it ended up, the hardest thing for me was it ended up destroying the river for my dog. And before that incident, he was just like, he loved it, everything about it. But then when that happened after that, it was just like, it was savage on him. He was always barking at people in the river, and no, like you're, trying to get people out. Kayakers would come by, and he'd chase them out. So with my other dog, my Digit, who was younger, I just ended up saying, no, I'm not going to do that to him. But I should have taught him a little bit, because that dopey prick would just run tongue hanging out into trees and into the river. He was like the opposite end of Loki. My dad said it funny. He was like, because he's like always like, dogs are like their owners. I'm like, well, I got two totally different ones. He's like, yeah, Loki's you on the river, and that's you off the river, you jackass. It's like, okay, yeah, touche, I get that, yeah. So, but yeah, Loki was a legend in the kayak community. He like everybody knew him. In the Western Canada, he'd come to festivals, and he was like the biggest, happiest. And he had a good life. He died in my, I ended up having to make a call at like 15 years old, I think. He was 15. So or 14 years old. He had a good life. So
that is a good life. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's super unique. Crazy how he figured it out, huh? He was like, man, this kayaking thing is dangerous. Maybe we shouldn't be doing this.
he was that class 3 boater. I was just like, just follow me, man. Just follow me.
That's totally what it was.
Yeah. I think I learned a lot of my lessons from that, from like how I take people on the river and stuff like that. But I've got a blue heeler now that I've left in Canada that I take out to the river, but she does first D's with me. I did 12 first D's last year on Vancouver Island. I worked 3 years I worked on them, and it was literally I'd go in a wetsuit and fins, and we'd go to the bottom of the creek, and I'd put her life jacket on her, and I'd swim, and then we'd climb, and then we'd swim and just like check out what's in there. That I'm not a drone guy. I like old school. I like to kill time with it. They take weeks, 6 months, a year to, scout something. And he did this. Like, I've got a couple footage of her. Like I'd throw her across the raging creek, and I'd jump, and we'd land on the other side, swimming her asses off the shore. And I missed that dog. I didn't get to bring her down to Ecuador, but yeah, I felt like I had to bring Tika up if I'm bringing Loki up. So.
All right. Well, one of the things I kind of mentioned at the outset, Benny, that you were doing some social media marketing stuff for Hardcore Paddles, but obviously that's a pretty huge topic in general. It's all the way from, Facebook and all this shit they've unearthed with Facebook, how they've known that it's causing problems for teens, especially teenage girls, and not doing anything about it, and all the money behind it. It's kind of like the equivalent of cigarette companies back in the day, it would seem. And you've kind of had some ups and downs with social media yourself that you sort of mentioned that would be good to discuss because it was impactful on your life. How did that kind of play out?
So I'm a firm believer that one comment can kill a person and one comment can save a person. With social media, all it takes is one comment, and you would be surprised that you actually just saved somebody's life without even knowing that with a positive comment. The worst part about the internet, though, is you can also, one comment can send somebody over the fucking edge yeah. And I don't think often enough people think about that side of it when they're trolling or they're making comments that, like about certain people's lifestyles, not even lifestyles, but their struggles and stuff. And, I think with posting, like ultimately in the beginning, it nearly killed me. That same community that saved my life nearly killed me in the beginning. And I started posting on, I think it's 2018, November of 2018. I posted a big long thing about my suicide attempt, or no, it was February that I posted about my suicide attempt in 2015 or 2018 that I hung myself. And I don't know how I survived or anything like that, but I did survive. I made a post about 4 months later. And the funny thing was at the time when I made the post, I was over the trauma of it, and I was rekindling my life, and I was just trying to be honest about it and reach about it. And my work, where I was working, they actually saw the post, and then all of a sudden when I came into work the next morning, they put me in like the corner of the room at lunch. They like literally treated me like a junior high student, and they took me out of the field. I was working in the mine. They took me out of the field and put me in the bay of the shop closest to the shop foreman's office that had the window in it, so the foreman could keep an eye on me. Little did they know I was already past that point, and that.
Where did you post it that they found it?
That was on Facebook. I'm not on Facebook anymore. I deleted my account on Facebook because of how impacting, like too many platforms was destroying me, because I had people reaching out on every platform, but I also was dealing with bad comments on both platforms. So I decided to go with Instagram and Instagram only, because it's a photo and of my comments, so people can see some kayaking, and if they want to talk about mental health, they can read my comments, or the vice versa, right? That I can talk about how kayaking saved my life, how the river saves my life, all that kind of stuff. And people will have the choice to read the comment or just see the picture. I have some followers that just like the photo that have no clue what I say in the comments. Yeah. I have other followers that read right through the comments and send me thank yous and post and appreciate what I do and stuff. And each one of those messages that I get, or each one of the comments that I get, and each one of the likes I get saves my life. Even if it's a bad post that talking about suicide and stuff, a lot of people are like, well, I don't know if I should like that because it might hurt them. But liking the post gives people that that validation that people are actually reading or seeing you and that kind of thing. But bad comments are also taking that away from them. They're invalidating the struggles. They're invalidating certain things and taking away from it. Even if it's like I'm not a huge fan of like the beater term. Because I believe, well, if you're being paddling class 5 and you're beatering all the time, then I get the beater term, because you should be smartening up. You know what I mean? But like with that class 3 boaters, people are learning class 2 boaters, class 3, and calling people beaters, I think is extremely hard on people. So making comments on, like, if a guy like me, if they were making comments on a beater that I did, I was posting a class 3 footage of, like, say for my first class 3 rapid that I ran, fuck yeah, that was sick. It was so, and people start making shitty comments like, oh, it's just class 3, blah, blah, blah. I was like, that shit, what people don't know about me at the time is I have a mental illness that I fight suicide every day. That comment could actually fucking send me over edge, go, what the fuck, or get me, that kind of thing. So it's really,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a really hard area because it's a fine line how quick it can destroy a life or help build a life. So, and I think we don't walk that line. We just don't think about that line. I think that's a serious issue. And I think we should be thinking about that line. Even with winter paddling, even with night paddling, that kind of thing. If you look on my Instagram, I don't think I've ever posted a photo of me solo boating because I'm conscious of if I post that, if somebody doesn't know me, they don't know I've been paddling for 18 years. They just see that, well, oh my God, I can do that too. We don't think about those things. We don't think about, posting us sliding off of an ice shelf into the river. And little do everybody know is that that water is 6 inches deep and the ice is, solid right to the ground, but that's not what it looks like on the photo or on the video. So we have to, if we want to be leaders in the community, we need to understand that social media can absolutely destroy somebody's life or take it away, but we can also help build people up too as well. And I think there's very easy ways to understand that. Okay, if like say I'm doing that ice shelf thing, it's like, okay, look, in the video, just put up there, hey, read comments, please. This is ice boat or winter boating. It causes, hazardous, blah, blah, blah. And then in the comments say, this is very hazardous to do. The ice that I'm sliding off is 6 inches deep. There's ground in there. It's solid, and put those things in there so we can do everything possible to let those people know that, that we're doing these things in safety, as much safety as we possibly can.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, that's interesting. It's kind of the evolution that we sort of need as users of this stuff too, because we're similar ages, and so we've kind of seen stuff, the internet build from the ground up. And I think I don't know, when I was a high school kid and stuff, I was on bulletin boards and crap, and just like didn't think too much of it, So it was like you mess around with people on something, and punk ass kid, right? And
none of our shit was ever recorded. We got to do dumb shit before the video cameras were
that's right. That's right. You're just anonymous.
yeah.
But yeah, you didn't think about that impact at all. And I think now like awareness is growing more and more that it's a superpower to be able to reach so many people across the world so easily. But you also have that miscommunication that goes on because you don't know who you're talking about. They don't know who you are necessarily. And it's so easy just to, it's so easy just to throw something out without even thinking about it.
Yeah. And then the thing is, like, when somebody follows you too, I believe like they one of the reasons that the follower follows you because, and if you don't know them, is they relate to you. They see the same kind of things as you. They have kind of the same struggles. And when they relate to you, I think that when you post, they believe that you're directing posts at them too as well because they relate with you, and not having the ability to understand that. Like, I don't have a lot of followers on Instagram. I've got 1,800 followers, but my follower, like the amount of people that engage with me is like a 64% or something, which is an astronomical amount of like engagement from 1,800 followers, and that. So I have to be careful with every single person that I'm posting to because I understand what mental illness can lead to. I try to like be 100% honest about, what's happening, that kind of thing. And I didn't back early days. I've started doing it more and more and more and more. But, I've heard people have called me a hypocrite because I run waterfalls, but I'm giving them shit privately saying, hey man, like you're posting about ice boating right now. This is not like, you need to be very careful on this. And they're like, well, you're a hypocrite. You're like running waterfalls. I'm like, well, this ice place that you're running is beside a city of 1.2 million people that everybody can see you. So that I'm like, that's not the same. My waterfalls that I'm running are very not easily accessible.
No one's going to go over there with a kayak and let me try this.
Yeah. But when people see you from that town, from their apartment, they go, oh my God, somebody's on the river right now. Let's get the fucking tubes. Like you're not thinking about the people that can see them, right? Like where, that kind of thing. So it's really hard to figure out your reach. Like, well, it's not hard to figure out your reach. People engage with you, then your reach, right? So you need to see the people that you reach and kind of try to post for everybody and not so it makes it dangerous. Most of my, I like I said, I don't post my solo boating because I understand that it is not a safe thing. Like, it's not fucking safe, plain and simple. Solo boating is not the safest thing out there. I understand that. However, I can make it the safest possible as I can for me. But if somebody sees me that doesn't know me and they see that and they're like, oh yeah, the same kind of idea. It's like, you got to be very careful on what you post with that stuff, I think. So.
Sure. When you talk about the kind of flip side of that equation, when you say that social media it's almost destroyed your life, but it's also saved your life. What are those things that have happened that have saved your life through social media?
Like I've got a photo of me on my Instagram that's like pretty much dead. I think it was dead at 35 seconds from my suicide attempt 4 years ago, and people made comments of like, just like, yeah, keep hanging there, Benny, blah, that sort of stuff. And there was not one bad comment on it. There wasn't somebody saying, oh yeah, you're weak, you bailed out, that kind of thing. There was all positive comments to make me feel that I was seen, that I wasn't alone, and I was there, and not shit on. Yeah, I understand that I tried to die from suicide. I get that some people see that it's the easy way out. And I can promise you this: if you can't kill a human being, you know how hard it is to kill yourself. People need to think about that, because if you, like, it's so hard to take like somebody else's life. If you take your own life, it's like that. That's like, yeah. So it's the positive side, like people reaching out in messages, and a lot of people, when they see my post, they don't comment on the post because they're worried about saying it the wrong way. And they send me a message, say, hey, I'm here, I see you, I hear you, I understand, or like, I'm here. Send me a message if you need to reach out. I'm around, and those are like some of the best things I have, because I know those people were worried about saying it the wrong way on the comment. So they've messaged me or they've called me to say, hey, I'm here. I don't want to comment on this because I don't know exactly what to say right now. That is a good, that person's awareness, or those people's awareness, that is a really good understanding of, hey, I know I might say something wrong here, so I'm going to call them and say, that kind of thing. So, but positively, those things have, when people send me a message, one message saves my life. It can bring me out of a death row.
It really gives you a support group that you might not have otherwise.
Yeah, exactly. Like I travel all over the world, man, like all over North America, South America. And I don't have, like, I have some people here, but, I don't have a lot of people around that I can just, go say hi to. So my Instagram I built a community on my Instagram that I can reach out to. And I know that community is not always there, but that's the best part about it is I can reach out to 40 people, and I know 2 or 3 people are going to answer me. So
do you find those people in that kind of online community? Are they mostly kayakers, or people that have come in because of the interest in the mental health aspect? Or what kind of people do you have following?
Both sides, but some are kayakers, some are people that have reached out to me with mental health. I have conversations with about 5 or 6 people. One's in Italy, one's in Venice, and one's in England, one's in Japan. I've never met them before, and if I have a struggling post, they say, "Hey man, we're here. What's up? How you doing?" And if I see a post from them, they're like, "Hey, I do the same thing." And I've never met these people. Like, I've never met them. So, and I've got a lot of people on my Instagram like that are just like never met them, but they understand they're struggling too. And sometimes at 3:00 in the morning, they're up. It's daytime for them where they're at, and they can help out, right?
Yeah, that's super cool to hear that the positive impact of a community like that, not just the dark negative stuff. How do you feel about it in general? Like, I don't really have I don't have that experience of a support community so much online, but I still get on Facebook and stuff, probably more than I should, and I'm always mixed about it, because on one hand, it burns a lot of time that probably I could be doing something much more productive with, but on the other hand, it has kept me in touch with people, kind of what you're saying, right? Like friends that I might have that I don't see on any regular basis, but then I get some connection with them because I see something happening in their lives, and they make some comment back to me, or sometimes it's even like, hell, during the kayaking season, sometimes I get to go kayaking with somebody that I wouldn't have gotten to go with otherwise, because that was the only way I would have known that they were around and made that connection.
Yeah. I think that's the benefits of that side of it. But however, I've also had people online posting photos of rivers that they said they weren't going to run that day, and I've gone to run them by myself. and I've gotten home and go, oh, these motherfuckers told me they weren't paddling today. And they
Really?
just, yeah. So like both sides of it though, that's the other struggle of like, I've got to meet so many people through Instagram where I've showed up in Colorado or showed up in Cali or PNW. Like a guy I met, Thomas Franco, in PNW, he'd reached out to me. We chatted quite a bit for years. Then all of a sudden I showed up in PNW. I want to send, let's go paddle. And he's like, hey man, I'm here. And I got to bow with him. It was awesome. So there's both sides of that it can be good or it can be bad. And I think that's everything in life, but I think the ability to be bad is a lot easier with social media than anything else. And that, especially with people that we have a perception of a comment. And I think the one thing that saved me is I don't just read the comment and freak out. Like I've learned to, this is how I feel about it. What does it say? What do they mean? And if I don't understand, I will message that person. Hey, what do you mean about that comment? Like, are you attack? Like, please explain it to me because I feel like you're attacking me, or I feel like that kind of thing. I've learned to with my illness. I can't just facts over feelings, right? I can't. I need to align my feelings with my facts, and if my facts are not aligned with my feelings, then my feelings are wrong. So I've always had to. Not always, but I've learned how to. If I freak out, I've learned to be like, hey man, wow, why am I freaking out here? Am I all right? Is it okay to feel this way? If that's not what happened, like the facts are this, and I feel this way, and if it's way the fuck over here, it's like, maybe I better tell my feelings to calm the fuck down and then try to figure out why they're not aligning with the facts.
Yeah, that's a cool way to approach it. It seems like a mature way to handle it, right?
But it doesn't happen all the time though. I definitely, like, I do freak out. Like I have an illness but I consciously try to repair it if it does happen.
Mm-hmm. We're all imperfect, right? We try our best. So one of the kind of like switching topics, one of the kind of interesting things is you meant, going back to like how I like this before when we were talking before, you said you were kind of listing like, man, these are kind of a lot of the things I've been diagnosed with, and this is how it's affected me. And I was like, man, you just kind of like flippant comment of lucky you, right? Like, it's, what a shitty card to get, hand to get dealt. And you kind of flipped it around in a nice way. And it was like, yeah, but it's given me some superpowers on the river that I wouldn't have otherwise. And one of those things you mentioned was you have a way of dealing with physical pain that is probably unique to your situation because of what you've dealt with in your life. And I would say that on the spectrum, kayakers tend to be pretty good at dealing with physical pain, whether that's actually injuries or just, dealing with the difficulty of slugging your boat over some pass or through some gnarly portage or getting beat down in a hole, whatnot. Definitely better than your average person. But it sounds like you've had, injuries that you've just pushed through that probably your average person would sit out instead of dealing with, trying to keep paddling through it. What are kind of some of the experiences you've had and how you've dealt with them?
Yeah, I think on the first note with that, I think like the kayakers are the misfits of all misfits. No welder kayaker fits in with welders. No engineer fits in with engineers. And I firmly believe that most kayakers struggle with some sort of mental illness because it's like, I don't think all of them do, but I do think there's like a lot bigger majority of people in our sport that deal with mental illness than there is in pretty much every other sport out there. And I could be wrong with that, but with all the people I've dealt with, there's a higher percentage of people with mental illness problems that kayaking saves them. And the physical pain side of it has been like, I paddled for like, I think 2 years or a year and a half with 2 broken ribs, 2 fractured ribs. I paddled with dislocated. Before I came to Ecuador in September, I dislocated my shoulder. My buddy Ethan, in front of I think there was like 12 people on the river. It was on Fraser River, like a class 4 section, beginning of it, pretty much in the 3rd rapid or something like that. And we stood on the shore, and Ethan put it back into place. And then he looked at me. He's like, consciously, we're going to try to figure out how to get you out. I'm like, nope, stop. And I got in the boat. He's like, okay. And we got in the boat. We paddled down to what's all called Overlander Falls. You might know Overlander Falls. There's like an old classic poster of like a double drop waterfall. It's like a 15 into a 15.
Mm-hmm. I've seen those.
Yeah, and it's so we get there, and I said to my other buddy, I was like, "Are you comfortable just following me over this?" And he's like, we don't want to get out. I'm like, no, Ethan wants to fucking walk me out of here, and I'm a land beater. I don't want to break my knees on the way out of here. So I'm paddling to the end of this thing, because if I get out on there, I'm going to hurt myself more. So he's like, yeah, okay, you're good. So we went over the waterfall, and one kid that was just here, Caleb, he just left. He was like, he'll tell you, he's like, still had the best fucking line on the goddamn waterfall too. He did. He got pissed right off, and then I ended up paddling the canyon after that, and Ethan was kind of like, all right, well, you're not gonna listen. And that was my right shoulder on the Grand Canyon this year in April on day 4. I was screwing around pointing at a surf wave from the raft to some of the kayakers, and we got spun around, and that oar came up and took my shoulder out. I dislocated my left shoulder.
Oh.
And the young buck in the front jumps up and he's like, what do I do? What do I do? I was like, my shoulder. I was like, get and I told him to wrap his arm around my arm. And he was standing on the floor of the raft. I was standing on the cooler. I said, on the count of 3, you're going to go that way. I'm going to go this way, and you're going to go down. I'm going to go up. And I'm like, 1. He's like, whoa, 2. And I pushed him, and I went the other way, and we got back into place. And then I ended up oaring. That was on day 4. I ended up oaring the rest of the trip till day 19. I was leading the trip. I was the trip leader. And then on day 20 of that, I blew my knee out. I stepped out to get the raft, and I did the classic mistake. Stepped into dirty water, not looking. Twisted my knee and blew my knee out.
Oh man!
Deerhammer Distillery had given us a bunch of bottles, like whiskey and stuff. They had me on a label, and so they gave us a bunch of whiskey for the trip, and we had just 1 gallon jugs, which is 5 bottles. And while they're wrapping my knee up, my buddy said I drank half of that bottle, 2 bottles in about 10 minutes, and then I had the best sleep of my life. I passed right the fuck out. Woke up in the morning like, how did you not puke? And I've got a blade. I had they bandaged my leg up and braced it, and they're like, no, you can't paddle. And I argued with the guy. I was like, no, I paddled this long. I'm finishing this fucking trip. I'm not. And the paramedic that was with us, my buddy Travis, he's like, no, dude. He's like, I'm like, no, make it so I can sit in this seat and oar. So he put an oar, like the blade of an oar underneath me with it sticking out that far, so that would hold the cooler. And I'd sit there with my leg out, and I got the oar, right? I finished did the knife load after that, and yeah,
what did you end up doing to the knee? What happened to it?
And I blew my meniscus out and tore my MCL. Is what it was, yeah. But enough that I didn't need surgery, and the meniscus, I'm not gonna lie, it's still fucked. Like, anybody listening out there, please don't do the stupid things that I do with injuries. The funniest part, like that one on the Fraser River. Yeah, the dislocated shoulder, the first time, it was like the young bucks, there was a bunch of 16-year-olds that were paddling with us and stuff like that. And that night I ended up grabbing all the kids that were paddling with us, and I said, look, what I did today was not okay. And I told them, I was like, it's not safe to do that. This is not okay. I deal with things differently, and I'm telling you that please don't just think that you can do this. And, like this, so I chatted with them all, and they understood. They're like, oh, if it's you, we know you, Benny, and we're not going to do that. We're not, don't worry. We're not, but yeah, it was good to chat with them about it. But yeah, I'm down. Like, I'm in Ecuador right now, and I busted my hand a week ago. I don't know what that bone's called, the first hand bone. I took a rock between the paddle and the blade, and ended up broke a third rapid of the Hoyin on a 2-day trip, 50 kilometers of whitewater, and ended up. But the funniest thing is, my shoulder since Fraser hasn't felt fully good. I had no movement in it, wouldn't lift, and I hit my shoulder on a rock, and all of a sudden I've got full movement. It was like breaking my hand was payment for putting my shoulder back into the right spot.
Maybe you got a future in orthopedics here.
Yeah.
You got a bad shoulder, man. I know how to take care of that.
Yeah. But yeah, it was pretty, like, I took an impact, I bruised front end because I hit my head really bad on the third rock. But it was funny because all of a sudden I'm like, what the hell? Like, why can I all of a sudden reach my shoulder blades again? This makes no sense. So
they were I'm curious about the ribs, because I think it was a year ago or something like that, 2 years ago maybe, I'd done something stupid, and I think I ended up just bruising my ribs, but I wasn't sure at first because I had the whole, like, can't sleep at night when I breathe in. It's like super sharp pain in there, and I was trying to figure out, because it was kayaking season. I wanted to go kayaking. I was trying to figure out whether it would impede the healing or not, or if it would just hurt. and I ended up, I think I gave it a week or something, and I went kayaking even though it hurt. But was it not healing because you kept paddling on it?
Yes. Yeah, it was almost there, and then I'd do a slide and take a hit and re-break it.
It would just re-break. I see. It wasn't
I
solid.
think I made, well, like now I kind of deal with these two ribs popping. I was telling you, or like before we got on the interview, I was telling you about wrestling with a kid down there, and I think I popped a rib out of place, but it's the same one that I broke multiple years ago. And I deal with that quite often. And I literally kind of roll on a tennis ball and kind of like try to roll it back into place kind of thing. And it's like, it's not broken, but it kind of hurts the cough a little bit. And I felt a crack when I had him in a guillotine. So it definitely is, it definitely doing what I've done over the past 18 years and surpassing kind of the physical pain aspect of it. It is detrimental on my body, but I still keep seeming to able to push through it. Like I'm 46 years old. I'm still dropping waterfalls. I'm not dropping small waterfalls. I'm still dropping Metlaco. I'm still dropping Sutherland. I'm still, and I'm still paddling a lot of class 5 and stuff. And it's not, so obviously something's working. And I think it is because of my illness. I don't think it's because I think it's my mind is able to shut it off when I get on the river. I get up in the morning. Sometimes I can barely walk, but when I get in my boat, it's like mode on, it's shut off, and I'm good to go. So,
yeah. Can you make that connection to something like why it is that you can deal with this at a higher level than the average person?
I think because I've dealt with so much mental pain that the physical pain is fuck all compared to the mental pain. I think, and what a lot of people don't know about mental illness is like it coincides with physical pain. When you have depression, when you have, schizoaffective, like I'm diagnosed schizoaffective disorder. I don't think I have said that actually. So diagnosed schizoaffective disorder, which is bipolar and schizophrenic tendencies and symptoms. But I'm on more the extreme end of it. But any of those illnesses, when you like it leaks out of the brain and goes into physical aspect of your body. Anxiety, by borderline personality disorder, like all these mental illnesses go into that because it can be a number of different things. It can be like you don't feed yourself right, personal hygiene shit, that kind of thing. We're trying to take care of that kind of stuff. It all lines up and it all leaks out of the brain into physical side. And I think because of the amount of suffering my brain has had, I think it's given me the ability to shrug the physical pain off, like, just like not okay. Yeah. I have like when I'm soloing, I don't know if have you read into the Hell or High Water for the Sangpo expedition. Yeah. Remember they talk about in that, like when they talk about we die in our boat, boys, like we agreed that we die in our boat. That's my rule in solo kayaking is I pass out in the fucking boat. I don't pull, because that's the best life jacket you could possibly have most of the time and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of my rule. And I've had times where I passed out and got pulled out of the boat and come to swimming. And I think it's the illness. I think whether people say it's this, and I kind of be careful how I say this because it can, my mental illness is a wellness on the river. If that like, off the river, it's an illness. It's I struggle with suicide every single day, no matter how good my life gets. I fight to stay in this place because I hate it. I don't like this plane. I don't like being here. But when I'm on the river and I'm part of kayaking, it gives me something that I feel a part of, and I start looking at it. I'm on the river. I think about tomorrow and the next day and the future. And with the illness, with that being said, on the river, I believe it's a wellness, and that I have to, like I said, I'm sorry to the people out there that are listening to that have not found that yet. I have found that in my fight to find something to keep me in this place, and the river has done it for me. And I think all of that physical pain thrown aside, I don't want to lose it. So I think because if I do lose it, I'm gonna die. I will die from suicide. I will lose to my illness if I lose kayaking and the river. So no matter what, I need to keep the river in my life. And if that means pushing physical pain aside, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, that's amazing. Have you had to, because I don't know. As I've gotten older, I've had kind of a series of bad luck too. I think the last few years where I've had various injuries to contend with and try to keep paddling, but some of them have kept me off the water for some period of time. And it's very, especially in Colorado, right, where the season's so short. If you can't paddle when things are running, it's super frustrating. But
yeah, for sure.
I mean, even this winter, I'm not really. I probably would be plotting a trip somewhere if I wasn't dealing with some injury issue right now. But have you had to go through that period of time where you just felt like you couldn't paddle for a couple months or something like that?
Yeah, I had the Azure River in northern in Clearwater, BC area was me and a couple of guys, Pierce Huser, Jared J. Day, and Kenneth McKay. We're going up to the second or third descent of the Azure, and it's through BC hellfuck. It was like we did 1.9 kilometers the second day in like 8 hours, which is like a mile, maybe like less than a mile in like 8 or 9 hours. Just hell. And I was on a log, and I fell off the log with like an 80 or 100-pound boat on my shoulder. Ended up hyperextending my knee and putting my calf muscle up into my knee. Small tib fracture, and destroyed my knee. And it was right after COVID. Like I'd come back from Ecuador. It was the season just after Ecuador, and so COVID was still very apparent. So I didn't we were sitting there, and I tried to keep going. I couldn't hike anymore. So I was like, I can't go uphill. We got to figure this out. They're like, yeah, we got the inReach. Push the button. I was like, don't you fucking dare push that. Not going to happen. And I told them not to. I was still conscious. I was not hurt enough that I couldn't get myself out of there, or they couldn't get. And I was not okay with putting other people at risk because of COVID. We weren't supposed to be out there in the first place and we were. So I was comfortable. Ended up, they put me on a leash tied to my PFD, and I kind of walked 45 down most of the hills through the bush I walked on my knee with my hardcore paddle. It makes a good cane, by the way. Hardcore paddle on the fucking
marketing.
Yeah. I was walking down through the bush with that as a cane and just like made it through me. And like 4 hours later, the boys got me to the bridge. And by that time, my buddy Pierce has never yelled at me. He's never, and I'm walking through the creek by this time, and my knees buckling backwards, just like hyperextension. And I'm almost falling asleep. Like I was almost in shock because I just walked that much with this blown out leg. And all of a sudden I hear Pierce, like, Benny, fucking wake up. And I was, and we get up and and then I ended up not being able to paddle because my leg was destroyed. So I was like, fuck, I don't know what to do. I'm gonna lose my mind. Yeah. So I bought a violin. I have no clue how to play music. I'm terrible at music, and I needed something that would fully engulf my brain and frustrate me so much that I didn't think about kayaking. And I spent 8 weeks trying to figure out how to play the fucking violin.
That's pretty random.
Yeah.
It bridged the gap for you.
That's it, but that actually ended up going pretty good. I'm starting, I've got scales now. I can do that. I've always wanted to do a video where I don't know if you know who Lindsay Sterling is. She does electric violin dubstep. I've always wanted to be able to play one of her songs in one of my videos that I'm doing. I want to do for mental health. So I want to be awesome. In the background after some waterfalls and me rocking on the violin. I'm not there yet. I'm not even close yet. So it also gives me something else to kind of live for. Like when I'm not able to kayak, I didn't get to bring my violin down here because it's so humid change. So I'm going to get a carbon one. But it was. I ended up just finding the hardest thing possible that I could think of and put my fucking brain into that, and it worked. I'm still here. So.
Yeah, but that's actually pretty awesome that you're able to find some way to compensate for that. I think that's what we have to do, right? All kayakers love kayaking, and it's horrible when you can't kayak, but you also kind of recognize that, hey, there's other things in life too that can bring you pleasure, and you got to grasp for those. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that's why I love the river so much. It also gives me the ability to think properly about if it's not there. Like I can still enjoy it. I don't have to be in a kayak. Without the river, I will die. I should rephrase that. So without the river saves my life every day. Even sitting and sleeping beside it, or listening to it, it's given me the ability to make proper choices for my wellness and my illness, like my well-being and my illness. Do you ever talk to other people? Because it sounds like you do. Because of this outreach you've been doing and trying to raise awareness around mental health. You do talk to other people who are having similar issues to you, or just other kinds of mental health problems. Do you advocate for them to hey, you got to this worked for me. you've got to like bring the river into your world. Like go learn to kayak, go learn to raft. Do you talk to people about doing that kind of thing?
I definitely talk to people about doing that, but I don't tell them they got to do it. That's one of the things. It's like when you tell somebody you need to do this, you need this. It's something that you're telling me I need it. If I don't even know what it is, why I'm not going to believe that. I'm not going to listen to it. But if I talk to people, I say this is what I've done. This is how I do it. This is how I live. And this is how I do well now. Funny thing is, I've been accused of people that have come into my life the past year or two and said, "Man, you're not sick. There's nothing wrong with you. Like you live a great life." And it's like, okay, sweet. So let's sit down and I'll educate you on this. I'll show you some stuff. I'll talk to you about some stuff. And I'm okay with that because I think it's a good way to start a conversation because I don't get mad at that now. I will sit down and say, okay, let's chat. But with people that reach out, there's two ways for people to reach out. Like you either I give them advice or they're there to listen. I always ask that at the beginning of somebody asking me that. You want me to listen or do you want me to give you advice? And typically people say, well, I want listening. And then after that, they'll say, I have some advice. Then I'll tell them what I experienced, how it's helped me and what it's done for me and what water has done for me. I also correlate cave diving with it, and I'll throw in some other things like fly fishing and, trying to play the didgeridoo. I play that's one of the instruments I can play. And just like kind of, just attribute, like even going down to Colorado for Christmas instead of like, I can't kayak, I'm going to go to Colorado for Christmas, go hang out with the people that love me and I love them, that kind of thing, and yeah, so it's, I think, the biggest thing that I try to tell people when they reach out is just like, you can't let it define you. That is the one thing I tell people they cannot do is let it define you. We don't get to choose how we feel. We do get to choose how it defines our life though. Our actions from what we do, the reaction of it, all that stuff.
Absolutely.
So yeah. And I think the river can help a lot of people, but I don't think the river can help everybody. I think I firmly believe that not, what's good for another isn't always good for another person. Right.
Sure.
Just
We're all
because
different. Mine's a very complicated thing. Right?
Yeah. And I've done outside the box treatment too as well. I've done peyote, like mescaline, San Pedro, like stuff like that. And
did those help you?
Oh fuck that saved everything about my life.
Really?
I did peyote once a month, San Pedro once a week, and DMT once a day. And I went down from like 2,000 milligrams down to fucking 400 or 600 milligrams of pills a day. And if any doctor out there tells me that it didn't work for me or didn't help me, well, I'll give them the fucking here it is for you boys, the two birds in the air, because that's bullshit. Because they've always said that schizophrenia, you can't do hallucinogens, you can't do that. For me, it saved my life too as well. So
yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot of research going into that now, right? There's been a resurgence of how this kind of hallucinogenics affect people and can be a medicine instead of just recreation or
Molly
or back people feared it as something that was going to damage your brain or something.
Yeah. So there's still a lot of us for adventure out there to figure out how, like I've stepped out of the box on a lot of things, and I believe that I can. I know a lot of people with mental illness don't have a voice. And one of the reasons I'm still around here, I think that saved me a lot too, is the ability. I think it'd be pretty fucking selfish of me to leave this place and not help others that don't have the voice that I do. The ability to talk about it as much as I do, that ability to tell people, I don't care if you're going to listen to me. I'm going to talk about it, whether you like it or not. You can leave if you want, but I'm going to talk to this crowd. I pretty much forced it on people. It's like, I love kayaking, I love being here, but you guys are assholes if you don't want to listen to it. And if you don't want to listen to it, then it's either because you're suffering or you just don't know. And if you want to sit down and talk to me, and I can help you understand,
Yeah. Well, that's super cool, Benny, man. And I appreciate you sharing all that today. And I hope it finds some people and they find it interesting. And I think they will. What's your Instagram or other things that people should check out that if they want to kind of check out your pictures and check out what you're talking about?
My Instagram tag is at the League of Beautiful Minds. And that's pretty much my only platform is the League of Beautiful Minds. You'll see hashtag Drown the Stigma. Drown the Stigma is all over Colorado, all over PNW. You'll probably see it floating around on boats, some here once in a while. And in Canada too. But yeah, that's my only platform. And anybody out there that is struggling or trying to find a way and is new to suffering or whatever, or just starting to learn that they're struggling with that, I take messages all the time from people. Feel free to reach out to me. I am out of reception sometimes, but I will get to you the second I am in there, and I can help you get to places that you need, or like not like need, but like places that can help more, places that can, I can help you start and, a way, or, I can just talk to you. I have no problems, and once I connect with people, my WhatsApp number gets given to them and they have full connection with me anytime that, that kind of thing. I don't sleep very much, as we talked about. So
call them in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
but yeah, I just want to say one thing on top of that, though. I am out of internet connection sometime. So please, if you do reach out, understand that sometimes I can't be there. I'm not an emergency center, but I can be there to try and help you, guide you through other things and stuff like that. There's things out there that you can contact, that, the suicide prevention line. There's lots of things, 911 too as well. I'm not an emergency person, but I can try to help you, guide you through proper, the proper channels to get you help if you need help, or just talk. So
yeah, that's great, man. I really appreciate that you're trying to do something in that arena, and it's obviously a tough thing to deal with. So I think that's pretty cool that you're trying to do something to reach out and help other people. And like I said, I really admire people that are honest, and it seems like you're coming at this from a very honest perspective and just saying, this is what's real for me. And I think that's, a pretty powerful thing you can just do for other people too, just to be real about what your life is like. I
appreciate that, man. I really appreciate the kind words. I appreciate you bringing me on this too. This is a good opportunity to get my message out a little bit farther than the reach that I have, that kind of thing. Yeah. So I'm pretty stoked, and pretty stoked to talk to you on New Year's Eve, and you saved my ass tonight a little bit. So,
but I think that's the end of me saving your ass. So it's probably time for you to go find some New Year's Eve parties. So I better let you know.
Bro. Yeah, absolutely, man. Much love. I really appreciate it, and I don't know what else to say.
I'm back at you, man. Take it easy.
Okay, ciao.
These are my editorial comments. After we stopped recording, Benny mentioned to me that most people with his severity of schizoaffective disorder are not able to function on their own to the degree that he does. And I think that has really fed into his desire to reach out to other people with mental health issues and try to find a path for them to live a happy life. He noted that the posts he's been doing on Instagram and even these podcasts can actually be challenging for his mental health, despite some of the benefits that he already noted. But his desire to try to help others overrides his concerns about that. And I can tell you that being judgmental and critical comes easy to me. But this interview reminds me how important it is to recognize that when you encounter someone, you don't know where they've been in the past or where they are right now. And while it's more effort, it's also more rewarding for all involved to make an effort to try and understand what's going on inside someone before judging them.